Looks like it's recording. Hey, everybody out there in YouTube land, this is Sam Dennehy, aka Halfass Customs, and this is Halfass Presents the podcast. Today's special guest is Ken Anderson. I want to say he's more known in the model railroading side of our hobby, but he does build vehicles as well. He's built some pretty nice structures. I seen him on his modules at a local train show I went to. He's just a very good modeler altogether. So without further ado, Ken, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got in the hobby?
Hey, Sam, I'm glad you had me on the show. I really appreciate it. I've been in the hobby of model railroading since I was a wee lad. I will say that. I was probably about 12 or 13 years old, actually. I was getting into it when there was the Tychos, Mantuas, the Bachmans, a lot of the toy train scene, and I I saw my brother-in-law. He had one of the best of both worlds. I always say, I'm not a comedian, but he had his trains and his corner of his bar. So he liked drinking and he liked his model
That's
railroading.
cool.
And I saw the trains and I was just fascinated with that. So I actually didn't get the toy trains under the tree like a lot of guys coming up here to Christmas. I didn't get that. I actually bought my own train set. It was a Chattanooga Choo Choo, and
Oh, that's neat.
it was all downhill from there, you know. But anyhow, yeah, I've been in the hobby at least since the mid '70s.
Wow.
I'm with a model railroad group now called the Sipping and Switching Society of North Carolina, and been hanging out with those guys and doing train shows pretty much over the eastern seaboard, all the way as far as north to Detroit. We did a train show, and we're definitely a mobile modular model railroad group, and I've been with them about 25 years.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I haven't been with anything for 25 years except for modeling in general. I've been modeling for 30 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, not part of a Pacific club or group or anything, just modeling. I would say modeling is my second love. Cars are my first love.
Mm.
And then I met my wife, so she'll be
There
my
you go.
third love.
There you go.
That's neat. So model railroading for 25 years with the same group, I assume you must like the group in order to stay with them that long, or I would assume you like the group.
They
Um,
put up with me mostly. That's what it is. They just said, Ken, we really don't like you. We just keep you around, hang you up on there, like on a wall, just decoration, But nah, the guys are awesome guys. I couldn't find a finer group of fellows. They're just down to earth, good Southern boys that like to, play hard trains as hard as they work too, So yeah, good
yeah,
bunch of guys.
that's neat. It's funny that when you mentioned how you got into it, you said your brother had a train set or
As a brother-in-law, yeah. Yeah.
brother-in-law had a train
Yeah.
set right next to his bar or right on his
Yeah, he
bar or
had this thing
something.
in the corner of his barn, and all it did was go up, and he had to back the train down.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of weird, and that was an HO scale. But to go back even further, I was probably I could have been 6, 7, 8 years old when I actually saw his first N scale layout. And it was a little 2x4 layout. And back in that day, N scale, it either sit still or run wide open. I mean, a scale
Right.
100 miles an hour, and it just run around
Yeah.
there. And again, today is completely different from the way it was when I was as a kid.
Right.
Trains just they've all have almost a personality themselves today with the sound and the the DCC, all of that. It just
Oh,
it
yeah.
makes it
It's
come
in,
so far.
and I know I was watching What's Neat this week, I think 2 weeks ago, and Ken was talking about not Ken, one of his guests was talking about I don't even know what the guest was saying, but the company he works for is getting into in scale heavily now. I guess they were kind of just dabbling in it, and they're making these awesome sugar cubes and these modules or whatever you call them, the electronic chips for inside of
Mhm.
them to do everything like an HO scale or bigger can do. And it
Yeah.
just seems unbelievable for that scale to be able to do everything a bigger scale can do because
The
of the room that you're
electronics
not.
has come so far, Sam, today.
Oh, I know. It's
It has
unbelievable.
turned the hobby around, and what you can do with even 187 scale vehicles is just mind
Right.
blowing. What you can do with the lighting effects. Hey, and I know a fellow down under now is getting into RC 187 scale. It's just
Yeah.
totally amazing what they can do now.
Well, I just posted. By the time this posts, it's going to post in. It's not this next week, but it'll be the week after. Next Monday, this video goes live. But in the post I just posted, I was talking to Ken Patterson, and he was talking about that's going to be the next stage of model railroading, is to have every single vehicle or even like figurines, every single thing be able to be as realistic as you can for that scale. So every car moving, every car with the headlights, and all the people either like walking or whatever. Because
Wow.
I seen one model railroader. He's pretty famous on YouTube. I can't remember what his name is, but he did a whole tutorial on how the HO scale companies have made this magnetic track that you lay underneath the road, and then you put the
Hmm.
magnet on the car and it like moves the car. But they also did one with a guy on a bike. So the bicycle moves and his legs were doing this.
Pedaling.
And I was like, holy crap, the figure's only like this big. How do you
Yeah.
get his legs to move like that? And it was a whole tutorial on how you can build a small little layout using that system to move stuff. So, I mean, think like RC, that system, just this hobby is like, I would say within the last 10 years, jumping leaps and bounds compared to
Yeah.
how slow it was going to advance the technology to now. Once we figured it out, we're just blowing up with new ways to do things.
Well, I'm a big fan of the miniature wonderlands in
Oh
Hamburg.
yeah.
Oh my gosh! And their recent project that they're doing and was that Monaco? They're trying
Yeah.
to build the course there, and just the level of electronics and the computer, wizardry
Yeah.
that these guys are doing to
Right.
overcome obstacles is just
They're
mind
going to
blowing.
do it too. They're going to
Oh
do
yeah,
it. I mean,
oh yeah,
they built that airport. They say that airport is the most expensive small airport ever made at like a little over $4 million
isn't
just
that
for the
amazing?
airport.
It's so realistic. I mean, and the way they've programmed it for
Right.
the planes coming in, docking, and then they've got whether it be the type where it's got the stairs that they come
Hmm.
up there, the vehicle. They have
Right.
also the fueling trucks, the buses,
They
to
got a
drop off and
Millennium
pick up.
Falcon. They have a
Pardon?
Millennium Falcon from Star
Yeah.
Wars that flies in
Yes.
there. The
Yes.
only bad thing about that is I did watch a video where they did just a little, not a documentary, but just a little caption of that whole, what it does of just the Millennium Falcon. The only bad thing about that is once it lands, it does taxi down the runway like a plane. Instead of landing
Right. Right.
where it needs to, it has to like taxi just because of the way the rest of that airport works and
Right.
that
Right.
technology. That's the
Right.
only bad thing about the Millennium Falcon on their set. But everything else, I mean, they're the leaders right now. They are the leaders in model railroading and
I
HO
agree.
to uh to set the standard.
Yep. I agree. I agree.
That's neat. So you build or you're into model railroading. You're in that club. You build modules. I've seen some of your modules at the show that I met you at, which are really well made. The level, the detail that you put into it. You showed me some of your cars with the lights in it. So you put the LED lights in it. You put LED lights in your buildings or some of your buildings. And then you even modeled like an actual road with the buildings in your local town or a town somewhere here
Hmm.
in North Carolina. That was pretty cool because I love small town USA. That's one
Yeah.
of my most favorite things of all of the United States. And that was super small town USA. One major road, maybe a cross street, I don't remember, and a few buildings on one side of the street. I mean, that's as small as small town USA as you can get.
Well,
Um,
one of my modules, I say not one of my modules, I have many modules. One of them that I particularly have an interest is actually I build pairs of modules, and we name our modules. And these particular modules, there's some elevation change in that, and I call them my drug modules, upper and downer.
nice.
Upper is a unique module. And what's unique about that is there's only two structures on the module. One is an old, very dilapidated, paint wearing out. It's a little church. At the top of the hill, I have a motor car or a hand car shed that's trackside. But what weaves back and forth at the lower level, at the ground level where the church is, it doesn't climb. It actually goes through a tunnel at one end of the module underneath of the track, and that's something I very rarely have
Hmm.
seen model is actual highway tunnels also too, let alone model train tunnels, but highway tunnels. The only thing I didn't do in that particular tunnel is I wish I'd have put lights in it.
Yeah.
A lot of your tunnels, even in the 50s, I was especially down here in the South, especially along the Parkway, there's several
Oh, yeah.
Parkway, the Blue Ridge Parkway, there's tunnels and there is no lights.
Right.
So I have,
Is it because they have to be long enough to need lights? I don't know about tunnels that much, but I know long ones always have lights, short ones don't typically do, from
right.
what I know.
And there's a lot of truth to that. And I'll be honest with you, trying to do some of my homework, my studying up on just highways in general. Because let's face the facts, we got to have a home for our model cars to travel, and I very rarely ever
Right.
see won't say a realistic major network of highways. In our club that you did get to see, some of the guys are modeling even 4 to 6 lane interstates passovers over their yards, which is very seldom even seen.
Right.
Whether it
Which is
be
more realistic though. So it's
right,
good
right,
that they're doing that.
yes, and even if it's we're talking about the width of a module where the track is going perpendicular, they'll have this interstate or this I'm trying to say the right word is a boulevard style
Right,
bridge
right.
or highway that is crossing over the one end of the yard, and to me that adds to the realism
Oh, heck yeah.
of not just the model railroading, but there's a network of highways. And so, and here, let me say another thing, Sam, is in our club, we try to challenge each other to think outside the box and also model. And one of those things is we try not to always have a highway that might say be parallel to the track. Not saying that it isn't. There may be something at a 90 degree that may weave in and out, and so and of course you're going to have also a lot of grade crossings. So there'll be whether it'll be a lot of our guys are not doing a lot of signals. That's coming up. We're starting to add more. I have some that I want to add with also some crossing gates. So we are trying to make it as realistic as possible. Make sure the highways are the correct width. If it's a 2 lane road, also the markings. I use. I have. My daughter has even done that. She has not a cricket, but she also has a vinyl cutting, and I've done vinyl where I'll cut the vinyl, lay down the striping, whether it's the double line or I'll cut the lines, to be a double, double
Right, right.
markings or split, one way or the other. and also have the white lines on the shoulders. And then of course I'll dull down the finish, because most of this vinyl is a
Chinese.
glossy, so
Yeah.
I try to do that. So yeah, the highway interconnecting with the railroad definitely adds to the realism of the model railroad. And another thing is important to me is not to clog it. I have been so many club layouts, and you'll see, like, even on a 2-lane road, as I'm discussing, they'll have it, bumper to bumper, and it's
Yeah,
so
traffic jam.
unrealistic to me.
Right.
You know,
Well, so here's what's funny. In the 187 scale vehicles club that's online, they created a 187 scale module part of it. So it's called Route 187. Um, and basically, you've seen them in my other podcasts, but they're basically this. So you
mm,
have a module, you have the road at a certain distance, just like your guys' modules, where the track is at a certain distance. And then you can put whatever else you want on it, as long as the road is at a certain distance to match up with the other modules. So they created that, and it seems like in our club, or a lot of, well, I wouldn't say our club, but just a few members, when they build their vehicles, they've built one module, maybe two, but they'll take all their vehicles. They have nowhere else to put them, so they cram them all on that module. And exactly, it just looks like way too many vehicles on this one little tiny road.
and when you're at an exhibit or whatever, that's okay. I that's sometimes that's understandable.
If you
Um,
have to. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, and another thing is the winding road, the 2-lane road, and you've got cracks in the roads and patches.
Yeah.
I can almost put almost as much attention to the highway
Oh,
as
easy.
I can the trains, or even the vehicles here.
Well, if
Whether
you
it
if
be
you know what you're doing, then
right,
yeah, that's, you don't stop at the road and just plaster it on there and say I'm done. You definitely have to go the whole nine, like you would the rest of your module or any other thing you're building.
sure,
I
sure,
mean, you would want to do that, I would think.
all right, right,
So that's neat, because I know when I met you, I was talking to you about your club, and I was thinking, I think this is a exclusive for everybody listening. I was thinking about maybe joining the club or participating in your club, and getting a train module, so I can transfer this movie set back here, this backlot movie scene, to that train module. And when I go to our local, like 187 scale shows, the road will meet up to fit with the rest of your modules. It'll just have track on it. But then when I go to your, or like a regular train show, meet up with the train club buddies, that it'll still meet up with the tracks, and
sure.
everything will flow like it's supposed to. That's what I was, everybody listening, watching, that's what I was thinking of doing sometime here in the future. Ken was a great help, and motivating me and giving me all these ideas. And that's one of the reasons why I thought he would be a good guest, because he was very full of knowledge and he was a great modeler. So there we go.
I appreciate
Exclusive
it.
for all you guys listening.
Yeah.
So that's pretty neat. Um, so not only are you a model railroader, you build the modules. So you don't just build a plain module, you build a scene on the module, and you have to have their vehicles. So I see those vehicles on that table back there. You want to tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, you'll see, of course, the vehicles in the front here. I've here in the last couple of years, I've really went nuts over it. I go in phases on a lot of things, Sam, and one of the things is I've put a lot of attention to a maintenance away fleet. Um, you know, a lot of railroads had their own fleets, and of course, my little small railroad, uh, they're well covered as far as their fleet of equipment. you'll see that I've also got even little narrow gauge hand cars, uh, little hand carts, I should say, and also motor cars. And they got to have the vehicles to be able to get to some of their locations.
Right.
And I model I'm going to say a Appalachian southeastern railroad that's mountainous, and they're going to need to be able to probably get their equipment on some back roads and probably some dirt roads. I mean, some very rugged areas. So I've tried to model that. Um, as far as also, I have some other vehicles here, like my blue one, and the color for the blue is kind of ironic too. I can probably go way off the deep end on a lot of this stuff, and if you're a lot of your guests that get a little glassy eyed, kind of hold with me.
Well,
The
most of us
reason
are
for
car
the
people,
blue
so
vehicles, I'm going to kind of go in depth on that. I've not done a lot on my YouTube. I have actually a YouTube channel. Just look up Ken Anderson, but also give a purpose for your railroad. And I wanted to come up with a logo. And unfortunately, I'm not going to say I have anything, but I tried to also put the logo on the side of the vehicle. And it says, for my railroad, it's called the Watauga Creek and Southern. There was no prototype. I'm going to say it's a proto freelance. I went even a step further. I wanted to create not only the logos and the decals to put on my vehicles, I wanted to make that connection. And at train shows, again, I'm wearing one of the shirts that's for my club, the Sip and Switching. I actually came up with the decal, had a lady cut decals and put them on shirts for me. So I was like, okay, what kind of a shirt would I like? A nice a polo shirt, and that was a royal blue. So I
nice.
went not only with the shirt, I even went down to doing vehicles and also some of my rolling stock. So my inspection cars, this is an inspection car that I modeled. I took I think it was sweet cherries, and I tore out some wheel sets or 28-inch wheel sets. And I took this Chevy Bel Air and made an inspection car. It even has the little cow catcher on the bottom. They probably wouldn't do this on a Bel Air. Probably would have done it on maybe something similar to this. I can't even remember if this is a Plymouth or what. I think that's what it is. My era for the proto freelance is 1959. That's the dead end. I don't go beyond that because I think I've got I think it was a Cutlass, an Olds Cutlass. I can't remember what it was, but it's 1959. And I said, that's the dead end. I'm not going past and into the 60s. So I'm not one of those model railroaders that I say I'm modeling just a year and a month and
Right.
a day at a certain time and
Right.
all like that. But it's kind of casual. So this is I'm jumping around a little bit here, but you at least get an idea why I have, of course, this deluxe gold paint scheme for my vehicles, and of course, doing a lot of investigating or a lot of research on the internet, you'll see a lot of your big railroads had several even different paint schemes for their vehicles, their maintenance way vehicles. I picked where there'll even be some variation in the color, even right from this Dodge Power Wagon that I've also got, as I've told you earlier, I've even got 3D printed chainsaws inside the truck there. And I love Dodge Power Wagons. One of my old boss mans took one and he clear coated, but he left it all rusty and restored it, semi restored it, got all the winches working and all like that. So there's some variation in the colors for my maintenance away, but I've specifically went to the royal blue for the inspection car and also the superintendent's car. Um,
Well,
Being that I'm also,
let me break in real quick. I will say that lately I've been seeing on Facebook, there's been some posts of full-size GM vehicles as maintenance away vehicles. I seen a 56 Pontiac station wagon, looks like it came straight off the showroom floor on the track with the wheels in the front and the back. And you think, I don't think they would ever use this car, but clearly somebody created it if it wasn't an actual railroad that did
and
to make it look
it
that.
was a high railer.
Yeah, and it looks
Uh,
awesome. And
yeah.
I've seen Cadillacs, no kidding, 50s Cadillacs as maintenance away cars. I've seen 1940s Ford sedans and like the pickup trucks as those. And I mean, I wasn't around that time, so I don't know if those are real things, but I don't know why people would make them unless they're trying to mimic what they saw at some point in their life, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I again also being a model railroader, I also have modeled a prototype narrow gauge railroad. So I'm all over the board. And one of the things was is doing research and reading articles and even speaking with old timers. Some of the times, what is the craziest thing is that I heard a story was they had even some lady station agents, and they would meet the train at one depot and get their orders or whatever, and then they would jump in the car and go up to the next stop, the next depot to
Like
meet
on
the
the
train.
rails or just on
Pardon?
the road?
Just on the road.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow.
they might have station wagons or they might have a four-door or a vehicle, and they would actually use the vehicles for either superintendent or for staff to meet that. And it was kind of like, why would they do that? Because apparently they were shorthanded and they had to have staff. So it's kind of like, either they're meeting the passenger train or they would be meeting the freight.
Right.
So it would be the freight agent or whatever that would meet that. So even doing the research on the railroads and their vehicles is to me is fascinating. And some of the stuff you would shake your head and say, I don't understand that. Why would they do that? But again, I've tried to create a history with my rolling or my trains and also my vehicles. Um, I also try to do something you don't normally see. One of those things is you'll see is that a uh, I've never seen a U-Haul trailer. Well, guess what? The U-Haul was around. They started right out probably shortly after World War II. And this particular one, I've still got to add the decals to it. I got to build the decals. So I had a lot of these things 3D printed up, have a nice hitch put on a vehicle on a car like that, and create scenes. One particular area I'd like to build, I always want to build a new module, is I'd like to have a street scene where they've got all the furniture out in the front yard and on the sidewalk, and they're moving.
That would be neat.
And you can get 187 scale, whether it be 3D printed. There's all
Right.
kinds of stuff that you can find, uh, and to create that realism. And you're building a scene. You're telling a story of America on the move,
Yeah.
especially during the 50s. The explosion of the
The
suburbia,
highway. Yeah.
the
And the
highway
highway to get
systems, the
to, yeah.
interstates. Suburbia was begun. So and I also love travel trailers, and they got this particular kit we were discussing earlier, and I couldn't even remember. It was a company. It was called uh, Enterprise or something like that. I can't remember. Anyway, so I even went as crazy as to put an interior in this. There's a screen door on here, and so it was a little laser board cut, and I also love to also include if possible, the license plates.
Right.
Um, and I'll try to put hitches on them. Not everything has got a hitch yet, Even in this truck, I've got a specific location I want. So I even went to the extent to make fishing poles. And this is a JL Innovative white metal kit. So there's even a fire extinguisher in there. There's a tackle along also with the outboard motor on that. So again, I'm not, I'm not maybe as detailed as you are, Sam, because I've seen your stuff and oh my God, it just blows me away on how great it is. Also, there's some looks like I won't say a picnic basket, but they got a cooler in here, and then I even took some foil and I folded up. That's supposed to be the tent. So trying to create a story, and of course I've got a lot of figures also. Um, I don't have a real expensive program. I don't do. I don't have AutoCAD or excuse me, the CAD program for my computer, but I've also been doing printing. So I'll try to find a decent program to make the decals. And if I bought this van here, this one actually painted the top white. So I did my own decals. It's pretty hard to tell which one is the factory and which one is the one that I repainted. Um, Not everything I like to weather also, because a lot of your model railroaders say you need to dull coat everything, and everything needs to be, you need to knock down that shine. And to a certain extent, that takes it away to me. The
Yeah, I mean, some cars were weathered all the time, depending on where you lived in America. But then other parts of America, some cars were brand new and always glossy and clean and shiny. I
Well,
mean,
I
and
think what it is it's when you're doing photography, and that's another one of my hobbies, sort of as a very casual amateur photographer. But apparently, it's what the camera sees. But to me, again, that's
if you know how
immaterial to.
to, if you're a good photographer, you can manipulate the photo or the angle of the photo in order to get what you need. So you don't have to worry about that shininess. Like, I'm not a very good photo taker at all, but I understand that if it's too shiny in one certain, like, say, like the whole front fender is just gleaming with the glare of the sun and it takes the whole picture out of focus, then you got to move the camera a little bit so it's not in that,
Right,
like, you don't necessarily have to dull the car or move the car, just move the camera a little bit so it's not as shiny, so you still
right,
see the whole car. You just have to know what you're doing, even if you're not
right,
good at it, just understand it,
right.
and you can manipulate a photo pretty well,
Yeah,
in
so
my
I've got
opinion.
several things here. Of course, I also used to love, and it's so sad, is the Jordan products.
Oh, I love them too.
Yeah, it's so sad to, there's so many guys that are retiring now, that are in just model railroading, let alone on vehicles. And you hear about when I could buy this particular kit for like $2 or $3. Now they're asking like 20 or $30. It just, to me, it just,
Right.
they've taken advantage of that. But I also like, being that I model two railroads. When I say two railroads, I model a narrow gauge railroad. Was called the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, which is affectionately called the Tweetsie Railroad. And I try to model that railroad too. It just is not extensive as my proto freelance. The proto freelance, I can do just about whatever I want. And I like that, being able to kind of push the edge of what looks believable and
Right.
practical, but maybe it's, again, I have overly modeled the vehicles for my fleet, my maintenance away. But again, and again, this is nothing. I have box full over here, just full. And I have another problem, that is I get on the internet, it's like, oh God, I gotta have that.
That's
Yeah,
most of us.
and I'll hate to say it, I was glad that I did. I've got a lot of the Athearn cement mixers and dump trucks that you can't get them anymore. They've sold out, and
Oh
that's
wow.
another sad thing with the hobby is that um, a lot of the stuff that was on the market is now sold out, and you can't find it.
Right.
And that's kind of the way it is also with model railroading. If you see it and you find it and you want it, you better get it right then because they're doing these limited runs.
Yeah. To make them more
Uh,
exclusive and to sell them for a higher price, and
right,
people buy them, and they
right,
make their
right,
money from them.
right. I'd like to add some more detail to a lot of my vehicles, and I go far and wide. I am not afraid to buy from a company like Athearn or from Bush or City Class, or excuse me, Classic Mini Metals, IMAX. I'll do a little bit of anything that I want, and I have been. I get a lot of stuff. I used to get a lot of stuff from a lot of your die-cast modelers, but very little 187 scale. Tons of 148 or 140. What is it? 142nd. I can't remember. You got a lot of your popular 164th,
Oh yeah,
172nd
that's probably
scale.
one of the biggest. Yeah.
But I very little stuff in 187 scale to me. There a lot of stuff I'd love to have. You just
Hmm.
can't get that unless you're into that where you can. And I know Mike Buddies, you probably from Ken Patterson's. Mike has done something that was kind of interesting where they. I don't know if they it isn't a matter of scanning. They apparently will take like a 164 scale vehicle.
Yeah, they shrink it.
They shrink that
Yeah.
and they do, and I think that's fantastic. Another part of the hobby. Who knew?
Right. That's probably the hardest uh, side hobby to this scale that there is, to shrink a car bigger than what you wanted to 187, because I've heard people say you have to babysit that shrinking process so much because it's not an exact scale. Like 3D printing, you can exactly scale it to what you need it by just putting in numbers. uh, Shrinking a scale, it's like overflating something and then watching it decompress, and you have to watch it the whole time to make sure it's at the point you need it, because if you wait too long, then it's too small. If you wait too soon, then it's too big. So it's super difficult from what I hear.
Yeah, yeah. But I'd like to add more detail. A lot of these, like rear view mirrors, mud flaps. This particular IMAX, and it's very shiny. It's almost like I can't really look at that. And you get ideas. And
Brand new from the factory.
well, not only that, you'll notice that I put all the road signs and all like that. You know how a crazy thing? I'll get this crazy thing, and it's called watching a movie. And of all things, what that came from was Bruce Almighty. Bruce is
Oh,
riding in his car, and he's driving along, and he's got the prayer beads, and he's wanting an answer from God. And what does he almost do? He almost rear ends a state truck full of signs and warning signs and all like that. That's where that came from. And
the
I mean,
signs he was looking from God is all in the back of the
it
truck.
exists. So I took this IMAX and I said, you know what? Put the mud flaps on it, and everything's hanging out the back. And I know it's just that's taking it almost a step too far. But it was kind of like I thought, I got a truck, I could do that, and so I even put the state highway department decal on the side of the truck there too. So
So
yeah,
that's your TV movie vehicle right there. And nobody
yeah,
would really even
almost,
know, but that's
yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, I
So
mean,
if you,
it's like
yeah,
you
if you
got
get the
Ghostbuster
car,
stuff,
if
you
you
know.
get the car that Bruce Almighty's driving, whatever it was, I don't even remember, and you just have it parked in the back of the truck on a layout, and then just take a picture of it. You can say, "This is the scene from Bruce Almighty where you almost
Or you
run
could
into the
have it
truck."
where it's wrapped around a light pole,
You could do that too.
and it's where the truck's going on, and here he is sitting here, wrapped around that. And that's another one of those things too. Is uh, we sometimes want to recreate our our fascinations either with movies
Yeah,
and vehicles in movies. I know that with you, with Ghostbusters and
everything
also
else.
Back to the Future.
Yeah.
All those are movies that I've always enjoyed. I also am somewhat of a sci-fi fan. Of course, growing up with Star Wars, I'm not as involved with that, but I do like a lot of movies that vehicles, trains, or like I said, vehicles were used as the props in the movies. So
Well, that's funny you say that because there's a guy, I believe his name is Kurt. I think he's from overseas too, somewhere in Europe or somewhere out that way. He's 3D printing a bunch of He-Man stuff and Star Wars stuff in 187 scale. HO
really,
187 scale. Yeah. He's got that as much as I like Star Wars, I don't know all the terms from these things, but the two-legged walker with the head,
the
that big old that thing that the Ewoks tip over.
yeah, the
Um,
yeah.
yeah, he's printed that in 187 scale and
Wow,
put Star Wars figures in it. And he's also done a whole bunch of He-Man, like he's creating a whole bunch of He-Man collection vehicles, like
that's
from the
amazing.
whole cartoon. And he's so he's doing some Star Wars stuff that's pretty neat.
Hmm.
You could maybe get an ad aid or whatever you called it in the background of one of your
Yeah,
scenes. Just walking there out of nowhere.
yeah, yeah. But I try to model even scenes that you don't normally see. Um, Again, like I said, the winding road. Um, I have an idea also about another one of my movie. I was a big fan of because of Star Wars and George Lucas was American Graffiti.
Oh,
And
100%.
oh yeah, and I would love to do Mel's Diner with a full interior,
I
with
have one.
all the muscle cars. You
I have
know.
an extra Mills Diner built.
Oh
If
really?
yeah, it's got lights and everything.
Yeah.
I don't have
I,
all the cars sitting out front, but I mean, the Mills
well,
Diners.
here's another thing too. Sometimes I even stray away from the trains, and I like to build scenes.
Hmm.
There's one other structure I'd love to do, and again, if we could get into a plethora of talking about even structures that are involved with even vehicles. And one of my
Right.
other interest was is "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?"
I
And
never
there was a
seen that movie.
guy that actually, and he's out of business now, that modeled, excuse me, he had it print or cut. He had laser cut. Was the radio station from "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?"
That's cool.
And you can't get them anymore because the guy went out of business. And the guy, it was called, oh God, it just lost my mind about it where it was at. It's called Vector Cut, and
Oh,
Vector
okay.
Cut's out of business, and he did all kinds of neat details, dumpsters. A lot of this was all cut from either plywood or the MDF boards, the laser boards, and all like that. And
Right.
it's beautiful stuff. And he had the radio station with the radio tower and all like that. And I could just see, George Clooney and his cohorts going in
Yeah.
and have the old car sitting out there as they're going into the
Right.
radio station to talk to the guy. So yeah, there's all those things that you think about. Oh, I could model this, I could do that, I could do this scene.
Yeah.
Uh, Way apart, like I said, even from the model trains, which again is my first love, definitely.
Well, I mean, buildings and scenery and details is all part of model railroading. I mean, you can literally buy a train set from Hobby Lobby or something like that that just comes with the train and the tracks. and a controller, and that's a train set. But if you're a modeler in the model train world, that you don't end with that. You go so much further: buildings, scenery, hills, mountains, bridges, tunnels. You do it all because
Lighting, everything, yes.
yeah,
And also the sound too.
right,
The animating sound into scenes too has become a big thing too.
yeah.
Definitely.
So I mean, it all goes together. Like this whole hobby of I mean, this podcast mostly made for the vehicles, but I mean, in general, we're hobbyists, we're model builders in general. So it definitely crosses over into everything modeling. I mean, I've been building for the last, I don't know, 5 months, 125th scale model cars. I kind of took a break from the 187 scale, and that 125th, for the most part, equals out to G scale. So, hey, I'm building G scale vehicles. How about that? Steel model railroading without the model railroad. But yeah, I've been doing that, but it all like coincides. It's all modeling, it's
Oh yeah.
all building. So, I mean, it started off as just for vehicles, and so many people do so many other things that you can't just leave it at vehicles. It kind of be boring, maybe.
All right, right. Well, do you do much in the way of figures too with your cars, or only on your
I
out occasion?
do. So let me take my phone and show you. I'll turn the screen around. What the heck? Turn around. Did it turn around? There we go. So right here, if I can get the light out of the way, those two people are supposed to go with the 55 Chevy from American Graffiti. So that's Harrison Ford,
Okay.
and that's the lady person that he's supposed to be
Oh,
with.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
back here, back here, oh, is the light on?
Yep.
That's Cheech and Chong back there. Because
That's
I built
great.
the Up and Smoke car,
Okay.
the 64
Cool.
Impala. So that's Cheech and Chong. And Chong, no, Cheech is who's in front. He was holding a huge blunt that looked like a Subway sub, but that fell off.
Oh,
And
okay.
then, I mean, this damn light, I tell you.
I know how you
Um,
go there. Yep.
these two guys, they're just Woodland Scenics greasers, but I
Mm-hmm.
built the Grease Lightning car from the movie
Okay.
Grease. And
Right.
so one of them's John Travolta, and the other one's supposed to be the other guy from Grease.
Okay. Okay.
And then you got Stay Puff, but I
Yeah.
didn't build him. I just bought him. And
Yeah.
then I
But
didn't build these
I
guys
guess if
neither.
in size, he should be what, about 3 or 4 times bigger than that, or I don't know.
Yeah, he really should be, but
But hey,
to
that
get that
works.
model, it's like $100 plus,
Yeah.
and I don't really care to get it.
Yeah.
But these guys that are falling down drunk, I got these from Indonesia. These are the Ghostbusters figures.
Cool.
It only took uh, 2 months to get, 3 months to get them,
Oh boy.
but yeah, I got them, and they're super detailed. Uh, I didn't glue them down because I didn't want to glue them down there. I just taped them, and the tape is all falling apart. But
Right. Right.
yeah, they're the Ghostbusters figures, and then I got these monsters to go with them, and
Cool.
then the ghosts, and then there's Slimer right next to one of the Ghostbusters. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, I do. I do some movie figures. I don't do a whole lot of them, but I do some. I did sell a Cheech and Chong figurine to go with a Up and Smoke car.
Okay.
Once I sold, I assume the customer was happy. I didn't hear any negative feedbacks on it, so I'm assuming they were happy.
Sure.
But yeah, I do some figures. I don't do a lot, but I want to do more. I just had a friend of mine, Joseph. So shout out to Joseph, that printed uh, with a resin 3D printer, Doc and Marty from Back to the Future,
Oh, cool.
HO scale. So they're unpainted, so I have to paint them, which I don't have an issue with. But yeah, they're gonna stand next to the DeLorean as soon as I paint them.
I don't know if you're familiar, your listeners or yourself is familiar. There's a company out of Canada. It's called Mini Prints, and this guy started out doing a lot of people, or excuse me, he did animals. He's kind of branched off into other things. He's done grays, aliens.
Oh,
He's
cool.
done skeletons in
Nice.
187 scale. He's done some ghost, the headless horseman. He's done a lot of stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
One I want to buy that he has is it's called Joe the Banjo Joe. That's it. And he's in a rocking chair playing a banjo. And so I don't know, but you'd have to go to Mini Prints. And it isn't exactly cheap, but he's got some really nice stuff. He's also got some figures that are railroad crews. But with that and a lot of the animals, I was kind of impressed. He's kind of branched off into, I think, O scale and also I think N scale too. But
Wow.
yeah, just check them out. That's mini Prints. It's called, out of Canada.
Right on. Yeah, well, those Ghostbusters figures weren't cheap. They were $11 each plus $10 shipping.
Ouch!
So,
Yeah,
yeah. And then it took like 3 weeks to get here.
yeah.
So maybe longer. It could have took a month for all I know. I
Yeah.
paid for it and then I just waited.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Did they come
I'm
painted? You have to paint them.
no, they come totally painted. They're
Oh
ready to go.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is the only way I really wanted them because the amount of detail, I don't know how these guys do it. They don't have any videos on how they paint their stuff, but and I don't know how they're printing it. I'm guessing they have resin 3D printers too, but they are superb. They're called Selling Miniatures on Instagram, and I think maybe the same name on Facebook. I don't know, but they created like all of Disney's lineup, every
Oh,
single character, every single movie. They've created Ninja Turtles. They've created every Marvel character. They're branched out to like musical artists. They've done several Michael Jackson poses, like Guns N' Roses and Metallica, and
oh wow.
I just saw them do Eminem and like two other artists. So they're branching out and they're doing all kinds of figurines. And I mean, they've got several movie figurines like the Ghostbusters, and they have Doc and Marty. I think somebody stole the CAD from that company because they're in the same pose pretty much.
Oh,
Um, but they've got so many characters and they come painted and they are top notch. So they're 100% worth the price and worth the wait. Um, and I would want like one or two of each character that they've made. It would just be amazing. But I
do you add figures to your vehicles or not all the time? Because I know
some of
you're
them I
focusing mostly
do.
on the vehicles.
Yes, some of them I put in there because all my 99% of my vehicles, they're meant to be car show vehicles like you
Right.
would see today. So you would drive by a park or a parking lot or something, you see all these cars in there. And if you were to go to a car show today, you wouldn't see very many people in the car at all unless they were
Right.
driving into the show. So they're all parked there, and that's what I model. I model a modern day car show in scale. So the very few people I do put in the vehicles, they're there to be like driving into the show or going to the show or what
Gotcha.
have you. Um, and eventually, I'm going to build a huge parking lot. I would like to build a parking lot on a module, probably 6x2 or 8x2, and just have the biggest car show in this scale the world's ever seen.
What you
And
ought to do is model Cobo Hall in
yeah,
Detroit.
right.
That'd be crazy,
That
wouldn't it?
well,
Oh my
that
God.
would be thousands of cars. I'm only
Wouldn't it?
hoping for a few hundred.
Yeah.
I mean,
You'd have to do a cutaway scene of a building
right,
on the side of the
right.
module so you could look inside there and see all the cool
Well, I know
cars.
Hershey, Pennsylvania, they have the biggest car show in the world every year, except for probably this year. They have, I think they estimate 30, I could be wrong in this, maybe it's just 10, but 10 to 30,000 cars, all classic cars,
I believe it.
and all over the world. People ship them in from out of the country to to go to this show, and then they have hundreds of thousands of participants and attendees to this show. And it's I think a 5 day or 7 day show, so it lasts a full week. They have a huge swap meet, a huge car show, an auction, contest. They have all kinds of stuff going on at this classic car show, and it's supposed to be the biggest car show in the country. I've never been to it yet, but one day I would love to just take a full week off and walk that whole show. Because I've seen these YouTube videos of where they're pulling out of the show. They'll block off the street, like they'll literally cut the street off at the next crossing, so nobody can come down here. So they're not blocking anybody from being able to do cross traffic or whatever. And they're just bawling out of this place, like hundreds of cars. Like it's almost like a movie without it being a movie, because it's real life.
Right.
You would think this is impossible. There's not that many classic cars in this one little fairgrounds or whatever, wherever they hold it. But yeah, there literally is, and it's unbelievable. It's like a dream.
Yeah.
It's my dream. It's where I want to die
Well,
and go to heaven to.
as you're talking about that, it's very probably, and I don't know how many of your listeners or your viewers that would probably even try to model a car, say like with a mirror up underneath of it, and with a,
Yeah. Oh, I
you know,
do that.
and then with a sign, and if you
Yeah.
want to, you're scaling it down from a real scene down to a
Right.
mod,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
even
I've
maybe a car on a turntable, and it's turning.
That's funny you say that, because I have two cars that I actually made displays for, like as you would see at a car show. So let me turn this around again. I'll open this display case, try and get out of the light. But right here, you've got the display it's sitting on. It's sitting on 4 scale wheels, so it's sitting off of the display.
Wow.
And it's made to look like as if it was being displayed at a car show.
Right. Right.
So that's one. And then hopefully I don't get the light on it. That's another. Um, I don't know. You may not be able to see it, but
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
that's another one. It's sitting on a full display, and it's sitting off of the display, so it's meant to be looking like it's at a car show.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I do stuff like that, but that's what I do. I mean, I don't
Right.
know very many people, if any, that are doing that, but that's all that I do. And when I build this module for a car show, what I want to do, there's a guy named Ken Hamilton. He used to work, or maybe still does, as an editor or an article writer for like Scale Auto magazine. He's a master modeler. He models in every scale, and he's one of the best in this country, hands down for sure, no matter what. And I've been wanting to get him on here, but he did a car show probably 10 years ago, maybe a little more. And he had people ship him their custom hot rod cars from all over the world. And he kept them for a month, 2 months, 3 months maybe, and filmed different scenes with all the cars, as if they were going to the show, they were pulling out of the show, they were driving through the city in a
Oh,
caravan
that's cool.
situation. And he made this little tiny diorama of like an old barn and a field where they all parked, and they were doing burnout contests and all kinds of stuff. He had hundreds of figurines to go with it to make it look like a real scene, and like stop motion. He didn't make it stop motion um, action or whatever you call that, where it's like
Hmm.
scene by scene by scene, but he did different scenes in different situations where you would see the crowd all here, and then they would move all there, and then they would move all
Okay.
there. Unbelievable. And it was a custom hot rod show. So you had these like lead sleds, these rat rods, these custom cars, these hot rods, everything that you would see at a modern classic hot rod show today. That's what he captured. And let me tell you, being that that's all I build, oh my God, I fell in love with it. I wish it was on display something so I could buy the whole thing. But and then he made, I think he made CDs for everybody that wanted to do it. He made stickers, hats, like little gift bags for everybody that sent him a car from out of the country. He can send the car back with like the gift bag of everything to deal with that show. And it was, I want to say it's a historic thing that somebody did in this scale hobby, in the HO 187 scale hobby, because I don't know anybody that has gone that far to do like a display show setting scene where there's different things going on in
Hmm.
each photo, all dealing with the same thing. Um, and I asked him if he was ever going to do another one because I'd 100% be a part of it. And he said no. I think he said he's doing it with his wife. And I hope I don't butcher this. I think his wife passed away or something, and he'll never do another one because the show was like their initials and then Car Cruise or something like that. I don't know. Um, but I want to pick that up and I want to do that. So when I get this module done with the biggest parking lot waste of space module there is, I want to have everybody from around the world like send me their cars. I'll keep them for a few months. Do the same thing he did, just do it bigger. I want to do it the biggest possible. I went up to St. Louis. No, not St. Louis. The Amherst train show in
Yeah.
Springfield. I I asked for a half a table, half a regular 8x2 table, 8x3 table, whatever a regular long table is. I asked for
Hmm.
half of that table. The person that was supposed to set up next to me didn't show up, so I set all my cars out. I had a table, full table and a half of just skittled candy metal flaked cars all over the table. I had more stuff for my little display setup than almost anybody at the whole show that wasn't trying to sell stuff as a company.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy the amount of crap that I have all custom hot rod rat rod stuff. And I want to say, now I could be wrong, but I haven't seen any proof to dispute it. I've probably got the biggest collection of lowriders, rat rods, hot rods, custom cars. I don't have the most famous, or I don't have the most movie and TV related cars. I know that. But for hot rods, rat rods, and customs, I've got the most in the world that I know of.
Cool.
So with that car show idea, I'll fill up half of the show, and then I just need other people to send me what they got so I can then fill up the rest of the parking
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Well, there's besides you, Sam. I'm meeting you and you showing me your cars and all like that. There's several people that I always say there's gentlemen or people, men or women or whatever, that as far as modelers that I'm not going to say I envy or that they're my idols or whatever. And some of them that have passed away now. One of them was Chester Fessmeyer.
Yeah,
Some of these
he was
guys just,
great.
and I've seen some of their work and it just blows me away. I mean, the attention to detail and the time spent.
Right.
I mean, I don't do near that. My focus is kind of broad because time. I'll be honest with you. I've taken a break over the last year for doing remodeling, so I haven't really done anything vehicles or model railroading wise or modules besides going to the train show. But the time spent on building vehicles in 187 scale that I have seen guys do,
Hmm.
it just blows me away. I met several of the guys even when I was up in Amherst a couple of years ago, and it blows me away. And it just they're fantastic modelers, and to me is a challenge in that scale because it's so small.
Right.
Um, and then again, you even got guys that are doing stuff in the smaller scales, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's almost like a fish in a bottle. I mean, a ship in a
Yeah.
bottle.
There's some people
Just
doing
blows me
N
away.
scale custom cars, and I don't understand them. Although, if you talk to a 125th scale modeler, you tell them you're doing 187 scale, and they don't understand that. So,
Yeah, they should scratch your head and say, why?
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, because you're talking about people that do so much detail, you can manipulate a vehicle real easy if you know, like the photo idea I was saying, if you know what you're doing. So, this is a 1955 Cadillac four-door, originally casted by Allied Form, so it's white metal or whatever you call it. But
Right.
this isn't that. This is a resin version of that. So
Okay.
a friend of mine, Louis, casted this in resin and then sent it. So if you know what you're doing, you can manipulate all the detail in just to have it look different, look neat. So all I did with this was I chopped the top and then I sanded down the A pillars, like the window posts, so
Mm-hmm.
they were smooth and flat. And then I just sat the roof right back on top of the body.
Right.
Then I took the wheel welds, or I didn't even take the wheel wells. I took the tires and cut a quarter of the top of them off on the
Right.
front, and then I cut half of it off in the back.
Oh, okay.
So now it sits almost flat on the ground, or it has the lowered look.
Right.
And then, I mean, you don't have to do this. I just put a different, I don't know if you can see it. I put a different grill on there, but you could keep the same grill and just leave it like that. You
Right.
still there? Okay.
I am. I
Just
apologize.
No, you're good. And just leave it like that. So then you put like some crappy paint job on it to give it like a rat rod, hot rod look. And maybe like I put the chrome strip on it, but you don't have to do that. But I mean, if you have the idea on how to manipulate detail, then this looks fully detailed, fully hot rod,
Right.
rat
Right.
rod detailed. And it's so basic. I really didn't do hardly anything to it. So
Right.
just like your models on your table, if you know how to do the simple things to change it up, even if it's completely like a stock kit, you just repainted it and put decals on it or whatever. Um, if you know how to do it the right way, it can look just as good as somebody that spent hundreds of hours on a model and you
Yeah.
didn't really do that.
Yeah. I've got I had, matter of fact, we got the interview a little bit interrupted. It was a friend of mine, Joe Balint guy, one of the other model railroaders. So
Oh,
I just declined the call. But I do have a bush truck that I'm trying to do a fading job on it, and I'm going to do some rust on it. It's going to be one of the older trucks in the fleet. So being that it's seen a pretty hard life, I'm going to probably have some rust streaks on it, and probably maybe a fender that's in primer, like red
yeah,
primer. I don't know. I'm going to do some fading on it. So that's one of my projects. I've kind of stalled on it. I've got some of the little. I got, what was it, like some of the detail parts still left in here. So it's a part, and it's in a process of weathering it and detailing it here soon.
yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's cool. I mean, hey, at least you have a plan. Most people will have an idea. They'll probably buy the kit because they have the idea for it, and they get too scared or too busy to actually get to it, and they never end up finishing it if they started it, or they never even start it because they're intimidated by their thought was bigger than their skill or something.
Yeah, I'm not
So,
afraid to tear it apart either. A lot of guys that look at that, and you know, being that even as a kid, I messed with matchboxes, and I'm not afraid to drill out the rivets or whatever in the back and
right.
take it
Good.
apart and maybe add a figure or detail
Yeah,
it. So, but
that's good
again,
because I get a lot of my hot rod and custom parts off of 164th scale Hot Wheels, like the expensive ones. There was a line that they don't make anymore called 100%. So it was 100% Hot Wheels. And anybody looking, you can look it up. It was a real thing. It was They were $5 to say $20 Hot Wheels just for one. And they called them 100% because they were, I won't say 100% correct in scale, but they were 100% better than just a regular mainline off the shelf at Walmart, Target car you can buy. Like these were
Mhm.
selected to go to hobby stores or selective toy stores that were meant for collectors and stuff. And I'll go to like a toy store or a show because that line isn't offered anymore by Hot Wheels. I'll look for them, and if they're open or they're still in the case, if they're $20, I'll go buy that just for the wheels, or I'll go buy that just for the engine or something. And then the rest of the car is junk to me because I'm not really building that scale.
Right, right.
But I'll go spend that on something that I really, really need off of that car just for that one or two parts, and then just junk the rest of the car.
Right.
I
Well,
probably shouldn't because those are rare cars now. But
I've got a question for you. Are you and sometimes a purist? Does it have to be
um
right? I mean, in other
I'm a
words,
purist in the sense of today's standards. So all my hot rods, I don't build period correct hot rods, meaning I don't build them to like a 1960s or 1950s hot rodder, like a guy coming home from the war, only building the car with what they had then. I'll take something brand new and shove it into an old 1930s car today, as long as I get the look right.
right.
So I'm a purist for today's standards, not for yesterday's standards.
And it doesn't have to
Um,
be to scale either. When I say scale, I mean
so
some
not
guys will
really,
say, "Well, that two vehicle's too big for 187
right.
scale, whatever."
Let me give you another example. I just did this on my history of video. I showed my rat rods. I've got 3 rat rods that where are they? Right here. You know what? Hold up. I'm just gonna get it out of this case because the lighting in this room isn't the greatest. And
Well, that's the way it is here too.
right. So this is one of my favorites. I'll get the light on it. Oops. Just dropping everything. That's one of my favorites, and this is one of my favorites. Uh, so, oh, the camera turned around.
It's okay.
Um,
Oh yeah.
so here is a Jordan Highway Miniatures Ford Woody, and I put these oversized wheels on it because in today's standards, you are now starting to see like 20-inch to 25-inch to even, I don't understand this, 30-inch tires, wheels
Yeah.
and tires on a rat rod. That used to be only a thing for like oversized Chevys and pickup trucks or whatnot.
Right,
But
right.
it's becoming a thing with today's rat rods.
Right.
So I've got these way oversized tires. These are 164 scale tires off of one of those 100% castings. And to go for the look, I think it looks really cool. It has sort of a cartoony
I'd
look,
like it.
maybe a toy more look, but overall the look is awesome looking.
I
So
agree.
yeah, these tires are huge, but they look awesome on this Woody. And then the next car is this another Jordan Highway Miniatures sedan um, with the same wheels. So it has a, I guess, a more of a toy look, but today's hot rods and rat rods are looking more extreme than ever before. They're
Yeah, I
going
watch
way
a lot of
overboard.
these the especially if it's on Netflix or whatever, you'll see these builds, there's Gotham Garage. There's another guy up in Canada, what was it called? Russ Bros. So I've been
Yeah,
watching a lot of the builds, and you're
right.
right. You're exactly right. That's the way they look today. And
Yeah,
they're
and
awesome
so
looking cars.
yeah,
Rat
and so
rods
because
or
of that,
whatever. Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm going for. I can do a period correct car. I can do that from like the 1940s or 50s, but they don't make parts like engine parts for that. So say you get like a flathead engine, you're never going to find a turbo kit that they would have put on a car back then, like a really old 50s style turbo kit sitting over the engine, not on the side like a new car or something, way over the engine, and just completely blocking the view of, the way you can drive or whatever.
Hmm.
You're not going to find that in this scale, much less be crazy enough to really want to even build something like that, because as cool as it'll look, nobody's going to understand what that is in this scale. This scale
Right.
is way too small to understand detailed parts like that. So you just need a basic small block Chevy engine or a flathead engine that the Jordan kits came with, and just leave the engine for the most part the way it is, but build the rest of the car around it so it looks much better than, you know, that engine.
Well,
But
you're talking about that. I've actually even done some of that myself. And some of your castings for engines, um, boy, they're not much there. I'm trying to remember
no,
Allied Forms. There was another company I can't remember. I
Allied
got
Farms came out with 3 engines.
yes,
One was a small block Chevy,
small
one
block
was a
Chevy.
Ford, and the other
Yep,
one was or no, yeah, one was a Ford straight six,
I think you're right. Yep.
and then the other one was a flathead, which is the same thing you can get in Jordan miniatures.
Yeah,
But
I've
yeah, I
actually one
got
of
those in
my
the
scenes.
beginning.
Yeah, one of my scenes I actually have in my structures. I've got. I try not to spend a lot of money on structures too because I'm kind of cheap. But anyhow, on one of these structures, I have across the street. It almost looks like a converted house, but it's a Shell gas station. Unfortunately, gas pumps. I didn't really care for it as the high level get the glass gas pumps I got through Tishy.
Yeah,
And then across the street, the structure that would have normally been that. When I say across the street, it's a little dirt road. I've got this little shed that's for doing small engine repair, and the doors are open. And on a pallet, I've got it strapped down. I used some string, and I strapped a small block Chevy engine, all painted up orange, all correctly, and it's even got the air filter on there. I could have probably removed that, and here it's strapped down. So I got a story, and the guy's
yeah,
leaning up against the door, just kind of hanging out.
that's
So
cool.
yeah, I tell a story even using engine parts and mufflers and scrap parts laying up against the building too. Yeah, that's kind of cool
Yeah,
too.
that's neat. Well, I got a lot of engines. I'll go back to these two kits and kind of explain these engines a little bit. Lou Wee, who's been on this podcast on one of the episodes, he kind of tried to take over the Jordan Highway Miniatures line
Okay,
and cast them in resin. So he got a bunch of original kits, cast a whole bunch of them in resin, and he offers them for really reasonable prices. But then he got a whole bunch of other stuff. And I don't know where he got most of this stuff, but there's a small block Chevy engine with almost like a blower style
I like
um, thing on top. It doesn't come with exhaust, so you have to manipulate the exhaust somehow. But
right.
it's just a regular resin, small block Chevy with like a blower top
It's
to it.
nice.
And then this is the same engine. I just cut that blower in two pieces and made it look like a dual carbureted high rise engine.
Nice.
So it's the same exact engine. It's just a resin, fully solid resin engine that he created. I don't know how he created them, but he's got a whole bunch of different kind of engines. None of them are super detailed,
Yeah.
um, but you don't really need them super detailed because, I mean, especially if you're going to stick them in like a 60s, 70s, 80s style vehicle,
Yeah.
then you're going to barely see any of that engine. You're only going to see the top of it if you see any of it. So you
Right.
don't
Right.
need it fully detailed, but you just need it enough for you to say, "Oh, yep, that looks like it works for that car."
You might be hearing that's my pump going right there. It's pumping some water going up from the pump. It'll probably eventually go clunk like that. Yep, there it goes right now.
Nice.
So
Well, I was going to ask you, actually, before we got into the cars, but I forgot. Your narrow gauge railroad up there, that Tweetsy railroad is actually a real railroad, or is it something some rich guy decided to make up and create a park
well,
out of?
yeah, there's a the story on when you say Tweetsy, The original railroad was called the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina. And it started out in Johnson City, Tennessee. And its full purpose was for excavating, or I shouldn't say excavating, it was for mining high grade iron ore in Cranberry, North Carolina, which it was about a 30, about a 34, 35 mile railroad that was built in the latter part of the 19th century. I was probably 1880 something, something like that. Um, Fast forward, after the railroad was flooded out in even Boone, North Carolina, and then they decided, well, they've pretty much exhausted all their wood that they had lumbered off here in the mountains. They ended up getting rid of the narrow gauge railroad, and so what ended up happening was a couple of changes. There was a businessman by the name of Grover Robinson that ended up acquiring this train set. When I say train set, it was a locomotive with a tender, steam locomotive, a 460, we call it affectionately a 10-wheeler,
Yeah.
and rolling stock and several other equipment and all like that, and brought it down to Hickory and had a fella he knew that worked for the Carolina Northwestern out of Hickory, North Carolina. They restored the locomotive and several pieces of rolling stock, and then brought it up to Boone, North Carolina in 1957 and started what is today is Tweetsie Railroad. So it's an amusement park, and the theme on that, of course, is a cowboys and Indians. And so they've been going for what, almost 60 years now, I guess. But that was an original piece of equipment with several pieces of rolling stock that was a part of the original railroad called the East Tennessee and West North Carolina. So I have modeled that in HO scale, which is narrow gauge, HON3. Now
So
you're
you
pretty
got the
almost.
actual engine, like the Tweetsie engines, or
I
not really?
do. It's a brass locomotive. It's okay. It looks very good. It was built by probably a Korean built company, brass locomotive, and very expensive. Not the greatest operating locomotive. You're pretty much scratch building. Um, and when I say scratch building, you're pretty much scratch building the rolling stock. You could probably scratch build a locomotive, but it's not exactly what I would advise unless you're
Right.
set up to do scratch building. Um, H13 is one of those things that it's not for everybody. It was very popular in the late 60s, early 70s, not very good operators. There's been life brought back into it by a company called Blackstone. They're the people that make soundtracks, your sound decoders for locomotives, and they've kind of breathed life back into HO3. They're uh, beautiful locomotives, beautiful rolling stock, pretty much buy, take it out of a box, set it on a track. And a lot of that is Western narrow gauge. So you got your the DNRGW, the Durango and Silverton, and a lot of those narrow gauge railroads is what popularized narrow gauge. So when you start talking about anything besides those Western narrow gauge railroads, you're pretty much scratch building.
Wow.
Yeah, I've scratch built several pieces of rolling stock, but again, now with 3D printing and a lot of your resins and like that, you can probably have a better chance of modeling it. But you better have a good piece engine or engines, and sometimes you gotta wing it. Sometimes you might not get exactly the prototype equipment that you or engine that you want. And I have several pieces of Model A's. I try to be period correct. It's very hard for me to model a prototype railroad because it's got to be right. If I'm modeling a specific scene, then you're going to have to do your homework. You're
Right.
going to have to do whether it be structures, where the track is oriented, and it's a lot harder for me to do that. I can do that. That means also the equipment, your cars, and all like that. You may have to, kind of use some modeler's license there. And I don't want to do that. I want to try to be as accurate as possible. Where on my proto freelance, I can pretty much almost do whatever I want, with that.
Yeah. Right. Well, I have an idea for you. Next time you go to, or next time you post on your club groups, or you
Mm-hmm.
go to a show, you bring your module. This will annoy them and probably make them hate you, but I think it'll be hilarious. Tell them pretty much what you were saying you don't do. You don't model a exact certain time frame with exact certain date and an exact certain time. Do that just for that one meet. Say, oh, this whole module is only modeled from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. So unless you're rolling in that time frame on my module, you can't run through my module. But set it up on the main outline line, so
Yeah.
every train's got to roll through it anyways, and then just say, nope, sorry.
Well, you
Until
know
it
what?
turns 6 p.m., you can't roll through it.
Some railroads even had gates,
Yeah,
especially for
out here
crossings.
in the States, I've seen them in the like European countries. I've seen that. I
Yeah, well,
haven't
they
seen
did
that
it
out
here in the
here.
States too.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
they would
crazy.
actually have a bar with a stop sign on it. So maybe I might have to have that on one of my modules and to say,
Right.
stop, sorry guys, can't
Yeah,
come through
between
here.
12 and 1, we're at lunch, so nobody can run on this
Yeah.
part of the track. I think it like or don't tell nobody until everything's set up and the first train's gonna run across it, and then just put your hand down and go, sorry, it's closed.
Yeah.
Just piss them all off.
you know,
I think it'd be funny only for that simple fact, but it'd be annoying to everybody else.
you got you've got all your purists even in vehicles, and you've got I have a friend of mine that is models the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, and he's been building on this railroad since the late 80s or mid 80s, I guess. And he's also modeling all the paperwork.
Oh
That
my
means that
gosh.
he does it to I think it's a 6-to-1 fast clock. So he has a clock, but you'll love this. His name is Dean Smith. Imagine that. Dean Smith, everybody thinks of Dean Smith with basketball with UNC Carolina. Anyway, but Dean is a great friend, and he has a dispatcher's desk, and he's got a phone there, which the time period he's modeled is in the 20s. I don't know how many
Oh,
vehicles he's got, but get this. He's got a yard, and he's got a yard office. He cut the top of the window out, and he put a camera. So he's got his screen monitor in the back there, and he's got it looks like in a window, like he's looking out the window of the yard office out onto a 187 scale yard where
wow.
there's trains actually modeling in there, and it's so clever and so cool. But
That is pretty
he's got all
neat.
the paperwork that he's doing. He's tried to model the structure, and he says except that you can see the top sash is cut out, and you can see the lens of the camera out the window of this yard office, which was a prototype yard in Johnson City, Tennessee. So cool,
Wow.
so cool. Yeah.
Well, that's funny you talk about a train yard, because I was thinking about when we were talking about roads, and you were saying it's not typical to see like 4-lane roads or 6-lane roads or whatever. It's funny when you see a club set up at a show and they do have a train yard, even if it's a smaller train yard, and they have a road going over it, but it's set up probably more modern, and they still only have a 2-lane road when that road would have been widened if it's more modern than just stuck to 2 lanes. Because anything going over a train yard, even if it's small, the population in that city for a train yard to be that big has to be bigger than just to have a 2 lane road going over it. And that's what you
Mhm.
see. You see most of the time 2 lane roads, a 2 lane freeway going over a train yard. And you're like, come on now. There's population of this city is much bigger than just having a 2 lane road going over a train yard. Get with it.
Oh
Figure it
yeah.
out.
Oh yeah. Well, another thing too, Sam, is with the Sipping and Switching Society of North Carolina, we do a lot of things that even on a modular railroad that you don't even normally see in modular railroading. And when I say modular railroading, that is that can be an extra. A lot of guys don't like to travel. In other words, a lot of guys like to have their model railroad in their basement, and the
Right.
convenience is go down there, turn on the lights, run their trains, and then when they're tired or when they're through playing, go upstairs, turn the lights out. When you're doing modular railroading, you're pretty much committed to being on the road. Your
Yeah.
stuff is going to be traveling, and either a trailer, which one of my friends has a flat front Bluebird bus with all the seats taken out of it, and that's where his modules live and are transported in that school bus.
That's
So
dedication right there.
anyhow, some of our guys will do things like, for instance, we got a lot of guys that love anything from the 40s or the 50s all the way up to modern day. And one of the guys got a yard, and it's an intermodal yard, and he's going to model the pig packers. He's going to be modeling the container unloaders and all like that. And at one end, he's having a good friend. And that's another beauty about our hobby is we've got a lot of guys that will do things like Joe Balint that you might have met. Joe is a great track layer, and so Joe will do nothing but track. When it comes to doing scenery like that, forget the scenery. We've got another fella you got to talk to, Mark. Mark Gugliotta has done a lot of the scenery on this particular scene, and it's in the intermodal in LA. And in that one section, he showed where he's building this 6 lane freeway that crosses over one end of the yard.
Nice.
Uh, he's scratch building all the concrete pillars, all the spalding that's the breaking away of the all that detail, and he's building this thing, and it's like it's probably over 1.5 feet wide, and he's
Good.
got all the Jersey barricades on there, and then on one side they're scratch building. You've seen a lot of the modern, the big tall, with a steel, columned billboards. So they're going to build this billboard. I don't know if they're going to put all the lights on like that, but they're going to try to make this billboard as realistic possible. So you're going to see that if you were on this bridge
Right.
crossing over yard, they're going to have this billboard.
That's
And to
awesome.
me, that is so cool.
That
That
is
you
cool.
can add that extra detail.
Right.
So
Oh, that's way cool.
yeah, it is so cool. Yes, definitely.
There's
But
there's a guy on our 187 Club group and Facebook groups named William Radcliffe. He he's I think he's a master modeler. He's building in HO 187 scale some bridge in New York City that crosses one of the rivers. I don't know. This bridge is 100% scale correct, and it's like 18 foot long.
wow,
Maybe it's not 18 foot long. Maybe it's 12 foot long. I don't know. It's longer than any bridge I've ever seen in person. And he's nowhere. I'd say I don't even think he's halfway done with it, but he's got like the frame so you can tell what it is. And anybody that goes up to it and is from the Northeast instantly recognizes it and knows what it
sure,
is.
sure.
And it's unbelievable, this bridge. And it's just a train bridge. It's got a train on the lower and the top, and it's not a car bridge, but it's a famous bridge that every single New Yorker knows.
Sure.
And it's 100% to scale.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, that's another thing too is that again we've discussed a lot of that here tonight is besides the vehicle, the highways and the bridges and the byways definitely add to that as far as trying to create realism towards the
Yeah.
our hobby. Excuse me, my wife's trying to let the dogs out in the background there.
Right.
But anyway, but yeah, that's a part of that. Hold on a second, Lisa, honey. He's got the dog. Don't want to come in. He wants to stay out in the snow, apparently. But anyway, yeah, that I enjoy making the even the highways.
Right.
And there's several guys have tried to master even building highways and try to make the appearance of whether it's a dilapidated spalding concrete highway to the pavement that's over a cobblestone road. A lot of that we've tried to even do that even in modular railroading, which is kind of that you might see in a home setting instead of a modular railroading, but we have tried to create that kind of realism too.
Yeah. Well, that's great because I mean, the hobby in general, you can be a car builder, you can be a model builder, or I say a model car builder and just build vehicles, or you can be an actual modeler and build more than just that, like build a scene for your models, build a display that you have buildings and trees and roads for your cars to sit on. That ultimately is the next level of model cars, in my opinion. But in model railroading, it's a must. I mean, you got to do that. Even if you do it half-ass and you just literally just buy woodland scenics, grass, not even woodland scenics, just that afro turf or whatever grass that they make, you just lay that on flat and you just put a sticker road on there. Just that much is better than just building a car and setting it on a table and saying I'm done.
Well, Sam, I will say this is that, and even in model railroading, you've got, I would say that it would probably, you can tell me if I'm correct or not. In model trains, you've got a lot of guys that are, I call almost like toy train people. You've got
the
your
Lionel
guys
people. Lionel
right.
people are toy people.
You've been to the prototype modelers meet out there, and there's guys, all they do is focus on either locomotives or rolling stock.
Yep.
You've got guys that are into, they've got their, like you say, toy trains, they got their Lionel like that. You've got your guys that are into structures. So I would assume this is the same way it is in your model cars. You've got your guys that all they care about is they want to build the car, and they focus and spend a lot of time on that car. And then you've got your guys that are wanting to build the scenes kind of like behind you, and you're behind over your right shoulder there. And they want to do, they want to have their cars to be populated or in a populated scene.
You want to tell a story, like you were saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I would think that in model railroading, you've got a lot of also cross pollination of modelers that they've got a little bit of everything that they have an interest. And I would think that your 187 scale guys that are doing similar to the model railroad guys.
Well, that's funny you say that because I've said it a bunch on this podcast. I've said it a bunch in our 187 scale groups that 90% of all 187 scale model vehicle builders or collectors, or both, are commercial vehicle people. They like anything and everything, big rig, commercial vehicle, construction, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Only 10% focus on the passenger vehicles and anything else. And then less than 1% focus on certain things with those passenger vehicles, like me. I'm hot rods and lowriders and customs and stuff like that. So yeah, they have their thing, and you can go to our prototype modelers meet out there in St. Louis and meet our 187 scale group, and everything on the table is going to be commercial vehicle related, and they all, in my opinion, because I'm not into that, they all look exactly the same. There's nothing that stands out on their table because I mean, they could have all the detail in the world, but you put a big rig next to another big rig that has half the detail, it looks exactly the same to me. It's a big rig. It's a commercial vehicle. But then a lot of people, and I'm not excluding myself saying my stuff is completely unique in any way. Anybody that looks at my table will just see a skittled, candy colored table of all the same thing. So I have the same problem. It just, my stuff is different than their stuff, but at the same time, the same, I think, problem they have with everything blending in, I think I have with everything blending in. You could have 10 candy colored cars on the table, and if you don't know classic cars, you're not a car person, you just you like construction vehicles, they're all going to be the same car to you, you
Right.
know. So
Right.
yeah, I'm not going to say my cars are better than any construction vehicles or my style's better. I have definitely the same problem as they do, except there's just a lot more of them than there are me. A ton more of them.
Well, tell me this, Sam, and I've seen this, and we're talking about 187 scale. I've been, again, known to meander around on the internet, and you see a scene or see a vehicle, and you say, oh, God, I got to model that.
Yeah.
I've got to just model that. And one particular is I saw that, and I'm not going to get it out right now, but there was a Metro van, international van like this. And I saw where they had a platform built on the top, and then they had a camera on the top, and they had a cable down to a station wagon. And I've got it's one
It's
of the
like
German cars. It's
it's
not
like
an
a
old.
European race car capturing camera
Well,
scene or
I,
something. Like they're
I
capturing something.
this was like it for a football game,
Football game. Yeah.
or like for doing at a race. And so on
Yeah.
top of the car, they had a speaker and for broadcasting too. So I said, you know what? I got to model that. And I've started the project, and I got the van, and I've got to build the platform
Hmm.
with the ladder on the side, which I
Yeah.
was going to use a ladder from a model train, and then
Yep.
have a guy that's up on there. So I'm trying to even model scenes, just like I
Hmm.
said with this truck here. Um, that is another one of my downfalls. I'll see something and I'll say, I got to do that.
Yeah. So do I.
And then it might be like there's one I'd like to model is a U.S. forestry truck, and there's a guy standing there, and he's got his forestry hat on. His truck's green. He's even next to this in this picture. He's got an RV trailer next to it, and it's green, matches his truck.
Oh
And
wow.
I see that stuff, and I think to myself, oh, I got to model that. I just got to,
Yeah.
that is so cool. Something that you don't normally see. Or if I should say normally see, I'm taking a piece of the past
Right.
and
Yeah.
you're making it in a scale model.
Right.
Uh, and again, and I agree with you. You got your percentage of modelers that are doing vehicles, excuse me, commercial vehicles, and you got your car guys. So you're going to see a lot of stuff here that I don't know if you would normally see. In a lot of your collector guys. I don't know, because again, I'm more into model trains than I am the
Yeah.
cars. But
Well,
it's so infectious to me with the vehicles, because it's all a part of the
yeah.
modeling
Right.
realm. Oh,
Well, the big thing is like to build a scene, it definitely helps the scene itself if you're building something recognizable. Even if maybe say you built like the corner cross street in your town that is a famous town from like the 1950s. Everybody's seen this cross street in movies and whatever, and you decided to build it. If it's more recognizable to the eye, to the person viewing it, it makes it a much neater, cooler, better scene to create. For instance, all this movie, TV related stuff on this module back here. Most people, say 30 years and older, know what these buildings are. I would say 40 years, 40 years. 30-year-olds hadn't seen the Munster show,
right,
much less the original Psycho, and they don't know what American Graffiti is unless you're a car person.
right, right.
Um, So 40 years and older, you know what that is. And that's the eye catching. That's the stuff that helps when you build a scene for that scene to be even neater than possibly what it could be if you were building something just that nobody's ever seen before. Like you can build it to you and you would appreciate everything about it. But if you were to take that and try to show it off, it just looked like any other scene that nobody's even seen before.
Right.
So it does definitely help. And the reason I bring that up is because there's a guy, I think he was my second or third podcast episode, named William Sampson. He created, and I believe it's the only two in the world right now, the Antique Archaeologies van that
Okay.
American Pickers use to travel the
Oh,
country.
okay.
He created the van, put their sticker on it and everything, and then he
Wow.
created the van from Aerosmith that they found sitting in
Yes.
the weeds
Yes. Right
in the
here. Exactly.
yeah.
Right here.
So he painted
Yes.
it and
Oh,
decaled it exactly the same way as they
I
found it.
remember that episode.
And so you have the vans. He has it on his train layout, on some part of his train layout. It's the van sitting in the dirt road, kind of where the grass is on the side, and then the archaeology van is here, and then the Aerosmith van's way down here, like kind of looks like it's arched, maybe digging into the dirt a little bit
Oh,
in the
that's so
back.
cool.
Yeah, and to create a popular scene, it people see that, I'd say 20 or 25, 30-year old and older know what that is because they've seen that show. Even if you
Right.
don't know what the Aerosmith van is, you've seen the show, you know that van, you can read the
Right.
side and recognize what it is.
Right.
So it helps, in my opinion, to model something uh somewhat famous in the sense that people know of it, you know
Right.
like you could model, if you chose to, the Twin Towers, and anybody over 30 would instantly know what those two buildings were.
Right.
Instantly. You could see it from afar and be like, yep, those are the Twin Towers. You don't even have to have any detail in it. You just have those two square, rectangular, tall buildings sitting right next to each other, and you know what it is.
Right.
So to model something uh, recognizable, I feel, is the eye catcher. That's what brings people in. And
Sure.
then you light it all up and you put more recognizable stuff on there. Like my Mel's Diner, I put all the movie cars sitting out in front because I don't have all the cars from the movie itself. And there's only really two famous cars from that movie, or three famous cars from that movie. The rest of the cars are just regular classic cars. So to have just it full of movie cars, it's much more eye catching than if you just had two movie cars and the rest of them blended in with just classic cars.
Right. Right.
I don't know. That's my opinion. I like to catch people's eyes and make them go wow.
Sure.
That's why I lit up the Ecto.
Yeah.
I mean, the first one I did, the internet went crazy, and then to my knowledge, besides me putting those lights in, well, I didn't put the lights in there, but besides me having the lights be put in there, the ones that I've built and sold are the only ones in the world that have lights in them in this scale. Now, on
Right.
164 scale or bigger, sure, they have people put lights in them, but at 187 scale, uh, unless you're getting it from me, I think I'm the only one that's made them and sold them. Now, I could be wrong. I tell everybody I get the work done by East Coast Circuit, so they could have bought one off of Shapeway and sent it to them. I don't know,
Right.
but I don't think they did because I think just the regular version that I sell, the one that I told you about, just having them light that up, it's like $70 just to have them light it. Now, this one, because this is the one from the second movie, this got twice as many lights on it. Uh, it's twice as much just to
Sure.
get lights in a car that doesn't move. So you got to be really crazy in order to want that. And
Yeah.
I'm that guy.
And you know what? That's okay.
Right.
That's the beauty of the hobby, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and to make it a step further, even with your podcast or your video, you're there wanting to share it with people. And
Yes.
like us at a train show, we're there to share the hobby.
Right.
And, it's like people will say, "Oh my gosh, that's great. How did you do that?" And I've had some guys too. They'll say, "Oh, I could never do that." I'd say, "Well, how do you know unless you try? How are you going to know? You don't know that for sure." The only
Right.
one
You
that's
really don't.
right, right. So you're sharing the hobby, and then you're given a chance for these guys to just say, "Hey, that's what I want to do. I'm gonna try that because if you can do it, sure, I could do it."
I'm going to show you something that you probably haven't seen. Let me get these Ghostbusters figures out of here. I mean, you've probably seen it maybe in something that I've posted online. I don't know. Some people have seen it, some people haven't seen it. But I'm going to put the Ghostbusters car next to the firehouse. I'll turn the firehouse lights on. So the firehouse lights are in pink because I wanted a more sinister look inside. And then change this camera around. So you got, we'll put this cord down here. You got the Ghostbusters car in front of the firehouse. And then I have a switch back here.
Oh yeah, you got the sound on it too.
Yeah. So I actually have the speaker inside the firehouse because the speaker is actually wider than the whole car.
Okay.
And everything's wired in the back. So the speaker too isn't as loud as it would be if it was outside of the firehouse or inside the car.
Right, right.
Because if you leave the siren on for too long, oh my God, drive you crazy. And I rewatched the movies, both the movies, Ghostbusters movies, and I understand the editing that they used for the movie to make that siren not be annoying. They barely ever use that siren. And then once they use it, they quickly turn it off in the movie. But it's so iconic, you don't even realize that. But
Right.
yeah, that siren, whew, you don't want to listen
Yeah.
to that for longer than a few seconds. I mean, it's cool though, and it's super iconic. But yeah, like I was saying, like you built something eye-catching and relatively famous enough for people to want to see it. Then you add sound and lights. Oh, you got a winner right there.
Yeah, the in the hobby of model railroading, we always try to get our senses, and some of those senses be first of all is our sight,
Yeah.
next is our sound, and then of course we've had even some guys said they want to get the sense of smell, and that would be a little bit pushes over the edge trying to get that much
I mean,
realism.
I guess if you had a foresty scene, say you were building the mountains and you had a foresty scene, you know, you had that narrow gauge train going through the mountains, it was chopping down wood, you got the log cars in the back, and then you put like a pine scent freshener right in there, then you would have the pine tree smell. And it would make
Well,
you feel like you were in the forest.
you know, uh, again, I don't know. I thought I remember you said that you'd been up here to Tweetsy Railroad.
Yeah, yeah, 2 weeks
You
ago.
have that coal smell, and I mean it's
Oh
almost
yeah,
instant.
I
When you
had that
smell it,
that
you know
coal
the smell.
fall into my hot chocolate too.
Oh, did you?
We're sitting on a bench literally right behind the train track. Right, well, when we went, they just did the Christmas, so next to Santa Claus's gingerbread house,
Yeah.
we're sitting on a bench right there, and the train goes and it passes me, and I start feeling these droplets of
Oh,
crap
that's
falling
neat.
on me. I'm like, what is this? And so I pick one piece up and I go like this, and
Yeah.
it's coal. And then I look at my hot cocoa, which was half full. I'm like, crap, that's now junk.
Yeah, and not only that, you spent a lot of money on that cocoa
Yeah,
too, didn't you?
right. Yeah. But I mean, I've never sat that close to a steam engine as it was going down the track, so I didn't know that was going to happen.
Well, who's to say that if you were going to model, say, for a scene like at and my son-in-law is big into drag racing. They've got a
Okay.
'69 Camaro, and
Good for
you
them.
might want to have the smell, which that might be kind of hard to do, is from
An
smoke.
exhaust smell
Tires
from,
being burned
yeah,
out. The smell.
right.
I mean, is very. You can
You,
smell that smell, or
yeah,
the racing
hot
fuel.
fuel. Yeah, yeah. That would be
Now that
super hard.
that
Um,
no, that's pushing the limit. I mean
I
that.
think the best thing you could do is get that car freshener pine tree smell and put it right behind your forest. And then you get that 4D, you know, attention
They
to
may
that
think it's the
scene.
air freshener in the car or something.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Go to like the gas station, pick that up, and put it, hide it within the trees of your module, and then boom, you got the smell.
Okay, here's the thing. Well, how about cutting out something and put that in the window of one of your cars? That would be ridiculous, wouldn't it?
I Yes, because I don't want the smell in that car. But
I'm
at the
just
same
just
time,
joking,
I've
but
seen people in the 125th scale world print out those air fresheners and hang them from the mirrors of
wow,
the 125th scale car. I don't care to do that. I don't need my
no,
cars that
no,
detailed, but it
neither.
is neat to see that somebody, some
Is
crazy
anal enough to
person went
try it?
through. Yeah. Now it doesn't smell. It's just like it's just printed out on paper. They
Right,
cut it
right.
out and, put string in it to hang around the mirror. But
I'm not doing that either, Sam. I'm not going to that level to do that with my stuff.
right.
Yeah.
No, one thing we were speaking about, uh, I think we were speaking about at that train show I met you at, was I have the Up in Smoke movie card, that 64 Impala, and I want to get an in scale steam smoker and stick underneath the car, but drill a hole out underneath the
Oh,
car
okay.
so it sticks right at the floorboard of the car and have the smoke come out of
Oh,
the
that'd be cool.
car as if they were smoking in the car. Because there's a scene in the movie, which, if you remember the movie at all, if you've
I
ever
do.
seen the movie, there's a
I
part
do.
where they're parked on the curb, not on the side of the curb, but on the curb. And the police gentleman comes up and asks Cheech for his license, and the car's just bellowing with smoke.
Smoke, yeah.
Cheech goes, I think it's back there on the back of the car there, like the license plate instead of the license. And I think that is one of the best comedy scenes in any movie ever. And
Yeah,
I would love to model just that scene. So to have that in scale smoke pipe kind of just puffing out smoke
sure.
from the inside of the car to the out, I think would be awesome. So
Well,
that's more of a 3D,
yeah,
visual look. It
yeah,
adds
yeah.
for, but I mean, at the same time, unless you've seen that movie and unless you remember that
You
movie, you have
wouldn't,
no
you
idea
wouldn't,
what that is.
well,
But I know
somebody's
what it
smoking or
is.
vaping or something too much.
Well, the great thing about, I say, being 40 or older, you've probably seen that movie. You've definitely heard of the movie if you haven't seen it. And if you've seen it, you'll instantly recognize, hopefully, what that little scene is trying to say. But I would also like to get a MP3 audio player like under the base of the display that I'm,
Right.
the scene, and have that scene play out as if the cop and him were talking back and
So
forth and you
have
could
you a little
hear it.
speaker or something up underneath there too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think that would be great because that
So
would
tell me,
help sell the scene.
tell me this, because you and I'm not as far as age wise. I'm a little bit older, but I used to build model cars.
Yeah.
And again, going back to almost where we were talking about, um, guys that they'll focus on just building the cars and all like that. Are you seeing more now that are guys that are trying to do scenes like you're talking about, the Ghostbuster or whatever, or these specific scenes? Is that what they are now trying to mimic with as
They're
much realism, now?
they're not doing, it's so funny you say that because within the last 4 years in the 125th, 124 scale modeling world, not so much dioramas, but in a sense, a much bigger diorama, buildings are starting to become a huge thing. People are taking the dimensions off of a real building and scaling it down with whatever computer program they have to do that, and either printing out or just, measuring and cutting with foam board or whatever, and making actual 1-story, 2-story buildings. For instance, in the lowrider world of the model car world, there's a famous street in Southern California called Whittier Boulevard. And there's a huge green sign that's probably 3 stories high, and it's all carved out intricate, like with uh, like flower or tree patterns all through this sign. And then
Hmm.
it says Whittier Boulevard. And I think it's in, shoot, I don't even know what city, maybe Inglewood, maybe, I don't even know. It's somewhere in Southern California, and it says Whittier Boulevard, and it's become the mecca of all lowrider cruising streets.
Okay.
They will literally take up all 4 lanes of this 4-lane road and block all the traffic and cruise at like 25 miles
Cruising.
an hour or slower.
Really?
And they do it almost every weekend, which is, I only want to live in California for that one reason,
Yeah.
is the cars.
Sure.
Or get rid of the whole state, let it fall in the ocean, but move all those cars to this coast. So one of those two things. That's it. But that's what these lowrider model car builders have done. They've taken a regular 8x3, if it's 3 foot wide, table or tables, and they've recreated that street. So somebody created this huge, maybe 3 foot sign, and they've put 4 lanes down of a road, and the edge of the table is at the one side of the road, and then they put all these buildings on the other side in 1/25th scale. And
Mm.
it's the latest thing to like happen within like the last 4 years of that scale hobby, which it's never been a thing. You go to a model car show, it's just cars on a table,
Right.
maybe a table for dioramas, but the dioramas maybe 1 or 2 in that scale. Then somebody built like a 1/32nd scale diorama or HO scale or 1/64 scale, whatever. But in the 1/25th scale, it's just become a thing within the
Well,
last few years. It's
this is
so
the
neat.
cross pollinization, as we were
Yes.
talking about, is the military modelers that will model a specific scene.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and a lot of guys are now doing lighting, like there'll be an Abrams going across, and they'll have it going over a dune, and it's shooting, and they'll light up
Yeah,
with LEDs.
right.
So
Yeah, they
you're
take
you're
like
you're
that cotton
seeing that
swabs and then
you're
they
seeing
put an
that
LED
cross
light in it.
pollinization, I think, Sam, from
Yeah.
your military modelers now into your classic car builders, and they're wanting to create these scenes, and I think it's awesome.
It's
Um,
really neat. I even went as far, I remember my brother getting a magic set when he was young. It was the floating card. Like when you see the guys do this and the card spinning, or a ring or
uh,
a quarter or something spinning. I know how it works because he bought the kit, and they use this. What is it? It's a string. It's They use a string. I completely forgot the string. Then they put this beeswax on the string to make it slippery, but it also makes the string kind of disappear.
oh, okay,
And it's a string full of like thousands of strands, and they take the one strand. So they'll painstakingly spread it all apart, take the one strand so it's virtually uh, invisible, and then they put this beeswax on it that makes it actually invisible. And
well,
then it's super strength. I think it's like, I don't, it can't be horsehair. I don't know what it is, but it's super straight string, so it doesn't curl up when you spread it out or whatever. And then it's super thin, but it has the durability to hold a certain weight, like a card or a quarter or something like that.
okay,
Um, but the string is invisible. So I thought, how about you put like a clear plastic, like how the cloud levels in the air, there's usually two sets of clouds. There's the lower
right,
level, the higher level, but then at each level, the clouds kind of have another barrier that like stops them, so they're all
yeah,
flat. So I thought, why don't you put like a plexiglass at the top, have the clouds set up here so they're flat. It looks like a cloud cover, and then you take those strings that you can't even see because they're invisible and hang stuff from them on
sure,
a train module or a display, like an actual display case of a little tiny module scene that you made, and have it look like little birds or something just hanging there. And then you can't see the strings, so it looks like they're literally floating in midair, and
Well, what if
nobody
you had the
knows.
DeLorean hanging like that, just flying through the clouds?
Yes, that. So no kidding, I don't have it anymore. On my Mel's Diner, I had at the very top of the diner part, I guess. I had the DeLorean hovering on top, and what was holding it up was a wire that had the car dealership. No, not the car dealership. The string. What are those? The flyers? Stuff you would see at a '50s car dealership. The cutout pies all on the string, different
Oh,
colors.
yeah. I
So
know what you're talking about.
in
Yeah.
in the second movie, in Back to the Future 2, Marty's going through the tunnel, and Biff's driving up behind him, pushing him
Right.
out of the tunnel. Well, the DeLorean comes and throws that string down, and Marty gets it and drives up and saves the day. But
Okay. Yeah.
I built a wire, and I put those pie cutouts, different colors on there, so it looks like the streamer. And Marty's hanging down off of it with his hoverboard, and I had that wire holding the car up,
Oh, that's
so it
cool.
looked like it was hovering. I have since did something else with that DeLorean, and now I don't have it hovering. But yes, I do plan on somehow, some way, maybe with multiples of those strings, having the DeLorean float above the
That'd be
ground.
cool.
Yeah, and
That'd
if
be
you
way
were
cool.
to like just hit the display, you could see it wobble. So it literally, it's floating.
Sure. That's
But
cool.
that's future stuff, I don't know.
Sure. You know what? That's a problem with that. I
It is the
think of all
problem.
these things I want to do.
Right. Because I actually
Just
want to
storing them
build
away.
that scene. I want to build that scene in diorama form of that scene of Back to the Future where Marty grabs the streamers and Biff's right behind him in that car and the DeLorean's hovering.
That'd be
I
cool.
want to build, yeah. And it's just like, 6 inches or a foot of that scene. So I don't even need the whole entire tunnel. I just need
Sure.
the entrance of the tunnel, and then it to be like, put a photo, like you print out a photo of the rest of that tunnel, so it sits back there, so it looks like it goes deep, but it's only maybe like this deep into the tunnel, just
Sure.
enough for the car to sit there and the DeLorean to hover right outside of it. I
That'd
want
be
to
cool.
build that scene. I don't know why, but I love that movie, and the
Yeah.
iconic scenes of that movie.
Sure.
Because
Sure.
I don't know if you saw, did you see that I built the Marty McFly house with the DeLorean in the driveway?
No, I don't recall right off the bat. No.
So I had another friend, or the same friend, Joseph, um, built out of some kind of hobby board the house. And when he built
This
the
Doc's
house,
house now, or is this Marty's house?
Marty's house,
Oh, okay.
from the
That's where
movie.
he had the truck, the
Yeah.
Toyota truck.
Yeah, in the garage. I don't have the truck,
Right.
unfortunately,
I think I
but
do remember now. Yes, I do
yeah,
remember. Yes, I apologize.
right.
Yeah, that is so
So
cool.
yeah, in this scene, why is this sitting so far forward? In the scene, this is from Back to the Future 1 and 2. So at the very end of Back to the Future 1 sets up for the very first scene in Back to the Future
Yes.
2. So this is the scene where Doc comes and tells Marty he's got to go to the future to do something about his kids.
Right. I remember that.
The
Yes.
Toyota Helix would be sitting in the garage, and this is the house. And the house is just so simple. There's no backing to it. There's no interior, but I didn't need the interior. I just needed the scene to be
Yeah, it's a
set up.
great prop.
Yeah. And then you got the van ready to go shoot him up, but that wasn't part of the scene. That was more the
Right.
mall scene. But yeah, this is what that scene. And I even put the trash cans out front, and I got the trash can that he hit when he drove up the driveway.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he
And then you've
throws
got,
all the stuff down the fusion thing.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got the fusion maker right there in the back.
Right.
So yeah, I built this, and people went nuts over this too.
I
They
bet
go
they
nuts
did.
over everything.
Yeah.
And then another cool thing, he also, before he printed the house, he printed these gates, the Lions Gates Estates.
Oh, yeah. I remember
Yeah.
that. Yes.
The problem was the print was the same for both. And the gates sit like this, but
Right.
the print was only for one side. So it says Lions Estates on the same side when it
Oh,
needs to be on this side.
on
But
that
that's
side.
okay because
Yes.
if you angle it more this way, you're good, you know?
Right. Right.
And so I had this sitting on my backlot module, sitting in between the Mills Diner and the Bates Motel. And I was going to put a photo of that street. So you have the Lions Gates bricks there and then a
Right.
photo of the rest of the street, but I still haven't done that either yet. So I don't know. Just so many
Great.
things you have in your head, the things that you want to
Oh,
do.
I know. So you're having more modelers now that are getting into building scenes now, using with their. When I say this, I'm talking about your 187 scale people. Uh, can't hear you there. I don't know if that's me or you. I don't know. No, if that was me or I don't think it's me.
Oh, I think I
No,
hit
there
the
you
wrong
go.
button. When I switched the camera, I
That's
think I
okay.
hit the button.
Gotcha.
So I'm not gonna say I'm the leader in building uh famous scenes. I only build really famous scenes. I mean, unless I'm building my garage, like this is a garage, an
Right.
auto garage for my half-ass customs,
Right. Uh-huh.
like the world headquarters for all my custom cars. Unless I'm building something specific for that, I'm building famous stuff. I don't, because I only want to do like eye-catching stuff. I don't really care to build like just regular stuff. So I don't think I'm the leader of that, but when I post it, I do get a lot of people interested in it. And then I think more than they want to build an actual scene, they want to build a car. So I got a lot of people, like I built the ZZ Top Eliminator car, that red
Uh-huh.
hot rod with the lightning
Right.
bolt on the
Right.
side. As soon as
Right.
I built that, oh, where did you get the model? How much is it? Where'd they get the decals? I want one, I want one, I want one. So anytime I build something, it's a lot of people get interested in it. They may not want to build it themselves. They probably want me to build it, or they do want to build it themselves. And I just inspired them. I showed them that it can be built. I
Right.
built the Blues Brothers car, and people went crazy over that. And so I just try to build eye-catching, famous stuff.
Sure.
I mean, even the hot rods, the rat rods, and the customs and the lowriders, all that's like eye-catching. You see, and you're
Right.
like, "What? I didn't even think that could be built in that scale."
Right.
So, and I
Right.
don't do it because I want to stand out. I do it because that's the passion I have for
Sure.
cars. That's what I love, and it helps that it does stand out. Like I'm not gonna just build a say a 007 Jaguar, or Austin Martin. Those are all stock unless you build it shooting guns, which I can't build a car. I can't build that 60s Jaguar shooting guns and bombs and smoke grenades everywhere. I don't even know how you would do that. But unless it's a stock vehicle, I'm kind of like, I don't want to do it. I want to build something really eye-catching because that 007 Jaguar, say from the newer versions of, 007, it's just a normal car. It's a
Right. Right.
supercar, but it's a new normal car that blends in with anything else. You don't know that that's from that movie
All
unless they
right.
label it the car from 007, and then you're like, still nothing to this. So
Right.
if I can build something that I love that really everybody else recognizes, that's what I really like.
Yeah.
And then with the Ghostbusters car, I mean, I wanted to build that for myself. And then I wanted to hopefully get lights in it. And then when I did, I mean, it like everybody loved it. And I wasn't expecting everybody to love it. I figured they would, but I built it for me and thought this is going to be a one of one. I'm going to be the only one. And then
Right.
people were going to buy this astronomically priced model that I wouldn't even buy for that price. And I was like,
Right.
well, shoot, they're going to buy it for that. I might as well make it. So yeah, I kind of that's my passion is to build what you don't think can be built, and then to do like really cool new stuff. I don't like to build what everybody else has already built.
Right.
I mean, I'll build what I've built 100 times already, but I don't want to build what other people built 100 times already.
Right.
But yeah, that's, and then so to back to what you were saying about the buildings, I don't know that they're necessarily wanting to build models or scenes as much as maybe just the car, so they can put it on their layout or their module or something. Because I've built 20 of those Ghostbusters cars, sent them all over the world. I've never seen anybody that I've sent those to post on any form that I'm on, because the only way they've seen it is if they were on a form that I'm in.
Right.
You know? So I've never seen anybody post it on their layout. Oh, I just got this from this guy. Look how cool it looks on my layout. Never. Not one
Yeah.
person has ever shown me what it looks like on their layout.
They're just
So,
car guys, and they like the lights and all like that. And
right.
that's the focus is just on that one item, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, they did tell me they got it. So I do know they 100% have it. Haven't heard nothing else about it.
Yeah.
I'm constantly posting the Ghostbusters car. I love that car, and people love it too. So
Yeah.
every Halloween it's up there. I post it every time I make a new one. I'm posting it, and then that new one floodgates open for other people wanting me to build them more. So I'm constantly posting that car all the time, and everybody else that has it never post anything about it. So
Well,
I
don't
don't know.
let my grandson or my daughter's boyfriend see it. God, they'd want one
No,
because
don't.
they're
You
big
don't let them see it.
Ghostbuster fans. Huh?
You don't let them see it. The only way they're going to
No,
see it is from you.
no.
They don't know me.
They've got the proton packs they made.
Oh, nice.
My daughter's boyfriend slash and my grandson. They've got the packs for her and him and my grandson,
That's
and
awesome.
they've
So they're
even took
ghost heads.
they've took pictures and all like that and made posters. They got all over the garage.
That's funny.
They're big Ghostbuster fans. Big
Well,
Ghostbuster fans.
I have a 125th scale Ghostbusters 2 car, and there is a company, the same company that makes that siren, makes a light kit for the first movie car. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking the second movie car has twice as more light, so maybe I need to buy 2 kits. But I want to take that Ghostbusters car, that 125th scale one, and light it all up. And I don't have the skills to solder wires and make the kit, but being that that company already makes it, if I just buy 2 kits,
All right.
put them into one, um, I can do that because it's much bigger. I can't do the 187 scale. Just drilling out those spotlights.
Man.
Oh, I'd lose every
Yeah.
one of them the first time I touch the drill to the spotlight.
Oh yeah. I
Ridiculous.
know what you mean.
I,
Definitely.
the first person that lit up my very first car was named John Howard. I think he's in Illinois or somewhere. And after he was done with the car, he said he's never going to build another one. He said
Oh
that
really?
thing tested his limits.
Oh, I bet.
And I said, I don't blame you. I'm super happy you did it. And the way it came out, perfect, phenomenal. So as soon as he said he couldn't make one, and I got my first customer that wanted one, I had to go search for a new company, and that
Oh
ended up being
no.
East Coast Circuit. East
Oh
Coast
my.
Circuit's done the last 19 of them for me.
Really?
Yeah, and they're working on one now, so that'll be like number 20 or 21 or something like that.
Wow. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wish they would. I wish that my influence would make them want to build more diorama scenes. But you know, if I'm building it and they see that it's out there, they know it's possible. Hopefully, it gives them, the urge to want to do it themselves. But I know mostly the only way most of our buildings or our scenes get built are on modules like this. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a smaller part of the 187 scale club group that does modules and the models. When say 70% of the 187 scale group only does vehicles and that's it. And then I'd say 10 or 15% probably actually have full-on train sets. So they do trains as well and vehicles, and just as much attention to the vehicles as the trains. But like Mike Buddy has one, Ken Patterson has one. There's a whole bunch of people that have train sets.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know about the people that just build the cars. How many of them are actually going, oh, wow, you inspired me to want to build an actual diorama. The cars, I've inspired a whole bunch of people, but dioramas, I'm not 100% sure about.
Do you remember several years ago, the fellow's passed away now, and he was modeling, I don't know if it was in one, I won't say 187, 164, 120 fight skill. And he apparently was interviewed. I'm not going to say National Geographic, but anyway, he was taking and he loved his diecast cars. And he was building these things and seeing he would take them outside and photograph them. I'm trying to remember that guy's name.
Yeah,
He passed away now.
I don't know what his name is. I've never met him. I never even friended him, but I've seen a whole bunch of his stuff on YouTube and on Facebook. His posts on Facebook float around all year round, every year for like ever. And what he does, he'll take his model cars and he'll put them far enough off of the street to where they scale to the street.
Yes.
And then he makes them 100% realistic looking.
So that's another hobby. See,
amazing.
that's another hobby.
That is something I want to do.
In a scene.
Yeah, I want to do that. Now, doing a 187 scale car, you've got to have the right conditions as a street and everything for that, because you got to either, I don't know how you got to, I don't know if you got to zoom in closer, you got to zoom out further, if you got to have a camera that does multiple zooms in one photo, I don't know. But to do it in this scale in real life is much harder than to just build this scene and then put the car on the road and take pictures of it with a scale building in the back.
If any of your your listeners or your watchers go to my Facebook page, or if they look up Ken Anderson or Watauga Creek and Southern,
I'll put your link down on the description so they can find you.
They'll notice I've tried to do that, and I take a lot of my modules with the trains and some of the vehicles, and I'll try to put them in a natural setting. Yeah. And I'm still trying to learn. I just bought a digital camera, a Sony, and it's a mirrorless camera. And my goal is to try to take better photographs, whether they're for submitting to magazines or online magazine or online stores or not stores, but anyway, I want to be able to try to learn how to take better photographs. And the problem is getting the best depth of field. And so right. I just, there's something about taking my models and putting them out and using natural lighting.
Oh yeah. Ken Patterson's like the king of that.
And I've had people do a double take, say, I had to double look and see that was really a model, not the real thing. And so I like that.
I've done that with my 125th scale cars. I'll have it at a certain angle. I'll take the picture with a certain lighting, and some people will go, it looks so good, I thought it was real. Right. And then I looked at the rest of the pictures and I can see what you did and how you did it. So I knew you built it compared to it being an actual real car.
Right.
And I think that's great,
But again, that's another hobby.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I say like Ken Patterson literally is the king of photography in scale. I mean, he works for like every major magazine and takes photos for them all year round. And what I've noticed on his videos, and he explains so much of how he takes his photos, he'll do the natural lighting outside. He just builds like a diorama or a module, and then he layers it with other scale scenes.
Right.
And then has the natural sky in the background. So he'll layer it with like 3 different scenes going on to make one photo look perfect. And that's kind of different from what you're saying, because we want like the houses or the buildings in the background of the real building to match up with the car or the figurine or whatever, that we have on the table.
Not easy.
No.
And you know
I've
what?
tried to do that, and I've never been able to pull it off yet.
I'm not very good at it because a lot of my stuff is blurry, but I've had it to where uh, there's several factors: the weather, your natural setting around you wants to interfere, and
Yeah.
another one of those things is as soon as I set this stuff up and it's on next to a major, even I take a lot of my pictures out here on the Blue Ridge Parkway. People are stopping and coming over there, and they're wanting me. Oh, I have to look at that. Oh, I saw
Oh,
you doing
wow.
that, and I just had to come by and say
Just
something.
keep driving. It's the
And then
most beautiful
sometimes
road in
it's
the
like
world. Just
I
keep
had one
going.
I had one lady. I says, "Ma'am, I'm kind of busy." Oh, she turned around with her kid and they took off back across the road, and there's cars
Yeah.
going by. So
Not
yeah,
not the world, the country. It's labeled the most beautiful road in the country.
it
Just
is.
see the rest of the road. Quit
You
worrying
keep
about what
going.
I'm doing.
I'm busy. Leave me alone.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, you know what? There's a problem, and the hobby of my hobby is that it just seems to be the rippling effect. I get
Right, right.
I focus on doing the trains, and then it gets spills over into the cars, and then next thing you know, it's photography, and
Well,
yeah, it can
I
be
think if
addictive.
I was in the trains, it would be the same thing. I mean, I had, I just uploaded Ken's video Monday, Ken Patterson's, and I was talking to him about, I love, like, if I like trains. I don't love trains. I love cars. But
Sure,
the trains I do like is the steam era. The cars I like is present day hot rods and customs. So those two wouldn't go together at all on one module unless you were building some weird fictitious time frame module. And I like all steam engines from the early days of steam to the last, days of 1950s of steam or whatever. I love it all. Um, but it doesn't work with everything else I like, because everything else I like is present day.
right,
So unless you were doing a train excursion on every single train you ever buy, that's the only way you're doing modern day scenes with old fashioned trains.
right.
And I love the Western period. So if I do a train scene, I want to use a Western period with the steam engine, or an early 1900 scene,
Sure,
because it's more visually cohescent. It
right.
works, you know. Um, so I couldn't build my cars and the trains in the same layout, basically, because I don't
But you're
do
doing it
period
in your own
correct
little
cars.
world. You're creating your
Yeah,
your own world somewhat, I guess, if you
right.
want.
I think the only way you could do that is if you did a train excursion across the country, like they did with the Big Boy lately, and they're doing with
Right,
that red and black one that goes from here to Virginia and all over the East Coast, or whatever that
right,
steam engine is. Um, but yeah, unless you did just like that situation, uh, I don't think everything else that I do would flow together. I think there'd just be too big of a weird gap. You see
could
all these
be.
rat rods, and then you see a steam engine. You're like, why is why is there cars in the Western days? But
Uh,
yeah, I don't know. I do like trains. I love cars, and I don't think I'll ever have a train set just because I like cars more than trains. But if I were to build a train set, it would be like a small steam engine era train set, I think.
well, a lot of my model cars, a lot of the ones I have, I got some Corvettes, is cars that I love that I know I never, one to one, I'll never be able to own. So
That's
I
why we
love
build.
they're much more affordable, aren't they?
Way more affordable, yeah. And I could have 100 of every car I love compared to not even one of every
Right.
car I love.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, and see, I think that's the great thing about being in a model train club, is a module club, is because you could have a little piece of what you want, be able to show that to everybody, your desire, your passion behind what you wanted, still have a small piece of that train set that you could literally just go back and forth with if you chose to, or just wait till you go to a train show, set it up with the rest of your buddies, and watch all the trains go through it. I think
Yeah.
that'd probably be the best way you could do trains when maybe you don't have the love for trains as you do for other things. Just
True.
do the one module or two modules. You still have a train set, and you know it can work. You can have whatever you want on it, so it doesn't have to go with anything else you're building. It could just that could be its isolated standalone thing. You know.
You got a lot of your guys that just like to do the scenery. They don't really. Some guys don't even care about the trains themselves. They just like to build the scenes and do the scenery. You
See,
know.
that's what we were talking about.
Yep.
I don't care what train goes on it. Just tell me where I need the dimensions for that track. I'll make sure it ends up that way at each side or each end
Yeah.
of the board, and then I'll build the rest of it the way I want it.
Yeah.
And you can run
Exactly.
your trains. I won't have any trains to run on, but you run all your trains over it all
That's
day, all
all that
night.
matters. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
that works.
And
Yeah,
yeah. So, um, before we go, uh, so I'll put your link in the description below for everybody listening that wants to know Ken Anderson any better or contact him or whatever.
sure.
And anybody that wants to know that switching and
Sipping
whatever
and switching society.
sipping,
You know
sipping
what they
like you're
say? You know what
sipping
they
a
ask
drink.
you? You know what they usually ask? They say,
What are
"What
you
are you
sipping?
sipping?" And we
Yeah,
say, "What do you got?"
right. So sipping and switching group, I'll put in the description below as well, so you can check that out.
Yep.
I did talk to Ken in great length about this group. It's one of the coolest groups, train model groups I've ever heard of. They're it's not like 90% of the trade model groups out there
No.
in this country, I'll tell you that. It's very enticing to want to check it out and maybe even want to be part of it compared to all the other ones that you might hear about. So I'll put a link to that description down there too for that group. You can check that out. Because I do want to build a module or maybe
Sure.
have somebody build me a module and then I'll
Yeah.
just put my crap on it.
There
One
it
or the
goes
other.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
will
whatever
say
you
this for
charge
your
for that, just tell me.
listeners and your watchers that we do run 100-car trains. The particular layout that you saw at the North Carolina State Fairgrounds and the Jim Graham building was a 17,000 square foot layout, modular layout. We are probably
And
the
for all the
single,
listeners, they had half of that with all their modules.
yeah.
It went from one side of the building to the other.
Well, we were in between the steel posts, and I think that's about 125 plus feet long or wide between the steel post of the supports on that building. And yes, we are probably the largest single entity. I should say we have several other people in the club, but as far as a modular club like Fremo or some of your big N scale clubs, we don't have a bunch of clubs to come together to make this layout. We're just a ragtag of one club with a bunch of guys now that are interested in doing modular railroading. And so we have grown steadily over the last 25 years, but the last probably 5 or 10 years, we had an explosion of guys and a lot of young guys too now.
That's great.
Probably the out of that youngest group, there was one kid, he's like 16 or about 17 or 18 years old. And
That's awesome.
the average age now is probably around 30 or less.
That's
A lot
great
of us,
because it seems like most hobbies are dying and slowly but surely. And hopefully it sounds like the model railroading hobby won't die for a good while. We keep getting younger people into it.
yeah, it just changed. That's what I
Right.
will say is that the hobby has changed. You know, a lot of your brick and mortar stores and a lot of in any hobby are dying.
Hmm.
You'll have to either go online. You better have a good, internet presence,
Right.
uh, because that's the way your store or your hobby store is going to survive. But yeah, we've got a lot of young guys that are getting in the club, and funny thing is, a lot of these guys are Steam fans. I was very surprised that we had several guys that are
That's neat.
Steam engine fans and love to run Steam engines, and a lot of
Yeah.
these guys
That's
were
really neat.
30 or younger. I was very stunned.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I know for me, I'm 40 years old this year, and I know for me, I love the articulation of what it all does on the outside compared to what an engine does on the inside. Like a
Mm,
modern day engine, you don't see nothing moving except for
I
just
know.
the wheels. You may see the wheels moving, you may not even see that. But on a steam engine, everything but the boiler has some kind of moving part somewhere
Parts on.
on it.
Yep.
And then even the big boy and the Challenger has an articulated front for that boiler because it's so
Yes.
long. So that's neat. If you can see that in real life, that'll blow your mind watching that
Yeah.
articulated front go over
Yep.
the switching tracks.
Yeah.
I seen
Yeah.
for our, I think the President Bush, President Clinton inauguration, I think was in LA when I was in California, and
Uh-huh.
we had a Challenger come down for
Oh
the
yeah.
inauguration, and it went up in the high desert, and I caught it. I think this was right when internet was starting. Somebody told me about it. I was in an in-scale modular train club. Somebody told me about it, said we got to go up to the high desert. It's sitting up there, it's getting ready to leave at like this o'clock in the morning. So we woke up like 2 hours, it's like 2 hours away. We woke up 2 hours before we left. We got over there to the train yard, and it was filling up with the water and whatever else it needed. And it was in a switch yard, and that articulated front went.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
And this thing is as huge as a dinosaur.
Oh
And
yeah.
oh, so neat. It's one of the
They
neatest
are.
things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I agree. I love
So that
steam.
could be why steam is popular with younger people, because there's so many moving parts on the outside of a steam engine compared to modern day stuff.
Yeah. They have their own personality. They do.
Yeah, it's a real man that can drive a steam engine compared to the computer driving the diesel engine today. But all right, Ken, I'm going to sign off. If you want to hold on, once I end this recording, we'll just say goodbyes and whatever. But
Okay.
everybody out there, this is Ken Anderson. I'll have his links below for everything about Ken. I hope you like the podcast. And if you do, like and subscribe, comment if you like. And you guys have a good day. See you later.
Thanks.